Beginning this year, we will formalize the export of Ghanaian labor to other countries. We will ensure a structured and beneficial system for Ghanaian workers seeking employment abroad and create safer legal pathway for them to work in foreign countries whilst protecting their rights and welfare. Mr. Speaker, this will also reduce illegal migration, prevent worker exploitation, and maximize the economic benefits of remittance and boost foreign exchange earnings. Mr. Speaker, I now take you to how these resources will be allocated in the year 2025. Mr. Speaker, we will provide a cedi equivalent of $279 million as a revolving fund for the Ghana Gold Board to be able to purchase and export at least 3 tons of gold per week from small-scale miners.
Betting tax that they said they have abolished. We never collected betting tax. We never implement the betting tax. So to come and tell Ghanaians that you have abolished something that was not implemented is to deceive the people of Ghana.
This is a house of records. Mr. Speaker, they came into office promising jobs. Yet, they are not giving jobs. Mr. Speaker, there is a net freeze on employment. 3, Mr. Speaker, their own so-called 24-hour economy policy did not find space in the budget. These are matters that must engage the attention.
Leader, please, let me listen, I'll come back to you.
Let me conclude so that he comes in.
Okay.
And true to it, you have come under item F, Income Tax Amendment Bill. So in giving us an explanatory statement, his legitimate expectation is to the effect is that what you have said in the budget statement.
We inherited an economy in deep crisis. Mr. Speaker, an economy hard hit with debt and beset by other fiscal challenges, such as large accumulation of MDRS, energy sector shortfalls, and financial sector payments. At the end of December 2024, total central government arrests amounted to 67.5 billion Ghana cedis, representing 5.2% of GDP. Gold Board to be able to purchase and export at least 3 tons of gold per week from small-scale miners.
The president told us last week, handing to the electoral strategy, that the economy was in coma. He said it. Now, after 1 week, the real official figures are showing that we have performed better than they handed over to us. Another thing is that the target they have set, their own target, they are setting GDP target of about 4% or 4.4, lower than they have inherited.
Well, that's a former Deputy Finance Minister and the Member of Parliament for the Inshaeso constituency, Dr. Stephen Amoade. He's not alone amongst the persons who had dissenting views about the budget that was presented by Dr. Kasiela Atoforsen, the Finance Minister, some 4 days ago. Well, after that, the NPP addressed a press conference indicating that the Finance Minister used some erroneous data to, as it were, make the arrears that he inherited huge and gigantuan than it was supposed to be. Some 49.2 billion, they say he erroneously added. Now, we'll be finding out exactly what the situation is and the truth of the matter, because they say that the figures been audited before. Is there what does the budget to you? What message does the budget send to you, listening to the Finance Minister? Or some concept, about the betting tax, collected or not collected. Well, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, the former Finance Minister, has apologized for that earlier comment that he made. But then again, we'll look into it because a bill has been presented, one of 8 bills in Parliament by the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiel Atoforsin, to begin the process of scrapping the betting tax. For now, it's still there. Okay. So we'll talk about it this morning. But you heard Alexander Afenyomakin talk about a net freeze on public sector employment. Well, this is one that, well, many are asking, where in the budget is this captured? We would go into this matter because what the finance minister presented on Tuesday was the major highlights of the budget. The full budget itself, we have a copy this morning here on Key Point. It has some detail, which we will get into. So stay with us, and this is the place to be, as my guest will be joining me shortly, and we will start the conversation this morning. Before the end of the week, now it's 2 days ago, on Thursday night, the president, John Dramani Mahama, announced sweeping restructuring of Ghana's security sector, appointing a new IGP, Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Akuffo-Dampare, immediate past now, has been replaced by COP Christian Tete Yohuno, who was then, until Thursday night, the deputy IGP. Now, he has been sworn in as of yesterday. Then again, we'll look into the matters as they unfolded between Thursday and yesterday. There was a statement that came from the presidency signed by Felix Kwatio-Fosu, the minister in charge of government communications. He's going to be joining me this morning. I have a few issues to talk about in this regard. So stay with me here on Key Point. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation. There are so many ways that you can join us on Facebook, on X, and on YouTube. And we are on a number of radio stations across the country, and also in London and in specifically Washington, D.C. in the United States. So you can join us as well and share your thoughts with us. My name is Alfred Ocansey. Welcome to the Key Point. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Key Point on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Ocansey, also on a number of radio stations across the country and on X on YouTube as well. You can connect with us. Now, on Tuesday, the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Tuforsid, presented the 2025 fiscal document that captures the revenue and expenditure projections and estimates of this administration. In fact, it's the first budget of the second term of President John Dramani Mahama. Captured a number of things. Well, the minority, 2 days after, addressed the press describing some data that the finance minister used as erroneous, especially when it comes to the arrears that he inherited from the previous administration. And that's crucial because the arrears tells a different story. Some huge amounts that he mentioned. The fundamental question that we asked after the budget was read in Parliament, I was there, where is the government going to find the money to pay the arrears, generate revenue, execute their own expenditure for this year? So that's the question we're going to be asking, plus some detail in the full budget itself that we have a copy of this morning. But this is the minority in Parliament. Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, the immediate past finance minister, addressed the press on this. Take a look.
Have erroneously churned out this wrong data in a bid to tarnish the image of the MPP administration by including 49.2 billion Ghana cedis in expenditure claims without any basis. Before the start of the IMF program in 2023, we had agreed with the IMF to set the fiscal anchor based on which we will monitor the IMF program. And these were the fiscal balances on commitment basis, primary balance and overall fiscal balance. It was in a bid to have a real-time view on arrears accumulation. So we ring-fenced commitments that had gone through the gift mix system then and were awaiting payment. These commitments were termed outstanding expenditure claims. Thus, if you look at the 2022 budget outturn, you will see this concept in there. In the same budget, we say that you are yet to audit the 49.2 billion Ghana cedis. So on what basis did you validate the 49.2 billion Ghana cedis before putting it in the data, which threw the fiscal deficit away? And you come and announce to the Ghanaian public that the government mismanaged the fiscals of the country.
Well, this claim of the erroneous data that the finance minister put in there to balloon the arrears and tell the story that the ex-Akufo Addo administration mismanaged the economy, that's what the minority says. Well, they will not take that because the finance minister did not put the right data out. So I put it to the finance minister himself. I sat with him in an exclusive interview after this minority press conference to find out from him whether it's indeed the case that if figures are not audited as the minority indicated, he shouldn't be adding it to the budget. Well, he responded to it. Take a look. These figures that you talked about are not audited as yet. So why then do you add it to the budget when all these figures that you mentioned have not been audited, really to present it to Ghanaians in the budget?
So first of all, the MPPs used to double standard, and it has always been their modus operandi. Anytime their back is against the wall, and they themselves knowing very well that they've left a mess behind them. As a Minister of Finance, I came to this ministry and came to understand that the Controller and Accountant General is holding BTAs, bank transfer advice, worth 18.3 billion Ghana cedis.
18.3 billion
Ghana cedis. I do not need audit to validate what the minister responsible for finance at the time had sent to the controller for payment. In fact, it has gone through various stages and it is waiting at the controller's office, waiting for cash before payment. I do not need audit to know that certain ministries have signed IPCs and have sent to Ministry of Finance for Ministry of Finance to process again to controller for payment worth 49 billion. Two put together, you are talking of approximately 67.5 billion cedis. What I need of an audit for is to ascertain the authenticity of the amount that they have said we should pay, for me to know whether that amount, that company in question did some work for Ghana or not. But the fact remains that ministries, department, and agencies under President Akufo-Addo had done work, sent the invoices to the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Finance has also forwarded some, the Minister of Finance has also authenticated some, and has been sent to the Controller and Accountant General. My audit that I'm going to do is not to assess the quantum, because I've done the verification already.
Done the verification?
I've done the verification already, and the verification is what gave me the 67.5 billion. The audit I'm going to do is to ascertain the accuracy, the validity of that claim, whether indeed they did work worth 67 billion cedis, of which they are asking the Republic of Ghana to fund.
Well, that's Dr. Kasiela Toforson there. So directly responding to the minority in there about the data that he used that they described as erroneous, ballooning the arrears to 67.5 billion, some 49 billion that they say that he added erroneously. He says he's done the verification because the information came from the MMDS. But this 67.5 billion they talked about is what is on the screen. It is actually the total government arrears payable to persons who have done one job or the other and have not been paid. The road sector alone accounts for 21 billion out of the 67.5 billion that you hear Dr. Kasiela Toforson talk about. This is arrears that they inherited from the previous administration. But then again, that's not the only one. This 67.5 billion is not the only one. He talks about some 1.73 billion cedis owed independent power producers, the IPPs, and government arrears payable is not part of this. This 67.5 is not part of the 1.73 billion owed the IPPs. It is also not part of the 68 billion cedis owed by ECG. ECG's debt, as of the time the finance minister presented a budget, is 68 billion. Cocoa Board debt, 32 billion. And then also the road fund is owed some 5.75 billion. That's not the only one. We also got to know that the financial sector cleanup, the latest figure when it comes to the total amount of money used to clean up the financial sector by the previous administration is 30.3 billion. This figure has been increasing over time. So we got the latest from the finance minister on Tuesday. It moved from 20 billion to 25 billion, 28 billion. Now we got to know that the total used for the financial sector cleanup, 30.3 billion. And out of that 30.3 billion, 26.9 billion was spent on the banks, savings and loans companies, financial houses, microfinance institutions, and asset management companies. Now, that also generated some concerns. So we also got to know that apart from this 30.3 billion used for the cleanup, another 10.45 billion, almost 11 billion, has been captured in this budget for the financial sector, some sort of correction, or you want to say another cleanup, but then it is captioned as to address the remaining financial sector legacy issues and emerging risks. So after spending this much on the cleanup to, correct, as it were, the mess, or as was captioned, the weaknesses in the banking and financial sector, we have to spend this much again this year. According to the finance minister, raises questions. He says he's going to look into how this 30.3 billion was spent. This is one that we are interested in, so we will stay on it in the coming weeks. But apart from this, the budget also gave us details of the debt service obligation. This is about the amount we owe, our public debt. According to the finance minister, our domestic debt exchange program, this administration for the next 4 years will have to cover some 150.3 billion, representing 11.6% of GDP in domestic debt service obligation. Apart from that, between 2027 and 2028, much of this debt is going to be paid within those 2 years, or has been scheduled to be paid. Over the 4 years, 2027, 2028, we're seeing 57.6 billion to be paid in 2027 and 52.5 billion in 2028. So that's your schedule for the domestic debt exchange program. It's how much they have to find some money in the next 4 years to pay, 150.3 billion. For the external debt, in fact, for this year, the domestic debt obligations, February they paid 9.9 billion. July they're going to pay 6.2 billion. August they're going to pay 10.1 billion. For the treasury bill payments that they inherited, 111.1 billion, which requires rollover on a weekly basis. So they have to deal with that. The external debt as well, 8.75 billion. That's about 10.9% of total GDP. When we produce all our things in this country, much of it, over almost 11%, we're going to use to pay external debt. According to the finance minister, it says 55% of the total external debt servicing is also concentrated in 2027 and 2028. So we're going to put that on the screen. Let's put this fully on the screen. And it tells another story, and it raises questions about why that is the case and what is going to be happening between 2027 and 2028. Now, there are people who understand, especially the schedule and how things have been and over the period. And these highlights I just showed to you is what the finance minister presented, so that for the uninitiated, those of you who didn't follow and also may not have had a clear understanding of some of the figures that he put out there, well, this is it. But there's more detail in the full budget itself, which we will get into. And I'm going to show you where you can see the full budget so that you follow this discussion every step of the way. And that's what we do here on Key Point for you, our viewers and our listeners, to be part of the conversation. You can go on the Finance Ministry's website. The full budget has been uploaded there. What you heard the Finance Minister put out is the highlights. So when you hear Alexander Penyoma talk about a net freeze on public sector employment, some amount of money allocated to the presidency and so on, well, we'll get into that, because the full budget itself tells much more than what you heard the finance minister say. Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie is an economist and also a lecturer at the University of Ghana Economics Department. He's with us in the studio. Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Alfred, and good morning, our brother. Good morning. Good to see you.
Great. And also, I will be joined by Phyllis Kwachofosu, who is the Minister in charge of Government Communications and spokesperson to President John Dramani Mahama. He is the Member of Parliament for the Ebrasebo-Kwamanchester constituency, and also joining us in the studio in a bit. And also we would have Senior Hosi, who is also a financial analyst, to be joining us this morning, one of the conveners for the One Ghana movement. We would have Dr. George Domfe, a lecturer at the University of Ghana. He's also going to be joining us on Zoom shortly. And also, private legal practitioner and a member of the oral preparatory team that have wrapped up their work. the convener for the Reloaded demonstration. Lawyer Martin Pebo, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. My name is Ocansey. Cool. Let me do my usual 30 seconds to 1 minute greetings. Yes, we should be greeting Yas Antua, Sofo Ekufu. You see, in the budget, we are coming to, you see that they increase the taxes to be paid by the mining companies, the growth tax by 2%. Yes, I'm sure Sofo Ekufu will be very happy about that. The last time we met about 3 weeks ago at the IE, that's why she kept asking that, Martin, can't our government do the same? If you go to the North Sea, when I say North Sea, in the UK, okay, of course, they've done it too much, the windfall tax. The windfall tax is about 38%. I mean, their normal tax is about 40%, corporate tax, that's for the oil sector. But in 2022, as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war, when energy prices went up, etc., the government increased brought in a tax called windfall tax, 25%. Then later they increased it to 35%. And then when this labor came, they increased it by extra 3%. So now it's 38%. Of course, it's having a lot of challenges for them. It's creating some of the oil companies are leaving.
Yeah, well, indeed, that's been the reaction.
Yes, but ours is very low.
We will look at that.
Ours is very low. It goes nowhere near the windfall tax happening in the UK North Sea now. Not at all. So I'm excited that at least the mining companies are being asked to pay more. They are paying far less. Our systems are weak. So that's one of the areas of Ekufu is interested in. And so the lithium mine, you see the lithium that we found. Yes. You see why it's good that the previous government didn't get an opportunity to conclude. They were just going to give away everything to these foreigners. So I'm sure the NDC government knows what to do. We will make sure that we get a lot more, right? So for Ekufu, good morning. Gamanche, yes, Gamanche, good morning as usual. Yeah, this week we're in court. This is the Adapa matter. We are dragging Iyoko and the Attorney General, trying to make sure that the law is interpreted well. You know, Godfrey Dami interpreted the law in such a way to allow Cecilia Adapa to escape. But we said, no, that's not it. Once that money was found, and the money is money that so far Cecilia Adapa cannot even account for. She said she had created a business, all the 2 businesses. When OSP did the investigations, those businesses didn't belong to her. So where did that money come from? Money laundering. That's what our case. So the court will deal with it.
That's the case you are in court with?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so...
Yes. And then Domahini Osiadeyo Ajimambedu the second. Good, good. And then today, let me add, apart from the 52.5 billion that we are asking Johnson Ekwuamwese do to bring the report on, there's a new one. This Ghana Bauxite Company Limited. Can you imagine? In 2022, 80% shares in Ghana Bauxite Company Limited were sold, okay, for $12.5 million. And then in 2024, that company is now worth over $1 billion. I mean, what kind of valuation? But we just feel that the Ghana Bauxite Company, those shares, the 80% shares that were sold, that Ofori Poku Company Limited bought, we think that it has to be forensically investigated because that bauxite is way too much to have been sold for $12.5 million. And yet in 2 years, not much investment has been done, and now this company is valued at over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. So it's not even like the company that bought Ofori Poku Company Limited, not like they brought in $200 million so that you think that, oh, now the company's valuation is gone to $1 billion. Not much investment, and yet this company is now worth over $1 billion. We want the government to investigate forensic, investigations, so that do a forensic audit. Let's see what happened. Is it a case that our bauxite was given away to MPP cronies? Yes, that's the question we should be interested in doing. And the matter of insider dealings, etc.
Well, we'll look at that. The reason why I asked about this is the part bit and the fact that you said you are in court on that because we don't know, right? Whether or not the source of the money and so on and the participation you put with that money laundering, we don't know. But then this week, this matter was in court.
Yeah.
I mean, and one of the persons here, her house.
On the criminal side, okay.
They pleaded for they went in for some plea bargaining.
Yes. So Patience Butchery. Yes. You know, the law allows the accused and the lawyers to ask to do plea bargaining. Yes, so that one is being sent to the Attorney General. We'll see how the Attorney General responds to it. And it's a good strategy to ask for that so that Patience Butchery will come and give evidence against Cecilia Adapa. So it means that in simple terms, this whole criminal trial itself is a nuisance. It's a nuisance and abuse of our criminal justice system. Cecilia Adapa, who cannot explain how she came by the money, is prosecuting Patience Butchery. I mean, where have you heard this? Well, you say your money is lost. You can't explain how you got the money. And you have the temerity, if not for Godfrey Dami, who would
some
mount
persons
such
have even raised questions about why, you know, these persons were going in for plea bargaining.
Yeah,
really?
So it means that
what?
they are saying effectively that the Attorney General, Dr. Ayini, should discontinue the trial and rather have Cecilia Adapa prosecuted.
That's what this plea bargaining going in means?
Yes, that's the real meaning of it. Because Patience Butchery is saying that, listen, I don't need to answer any questions. Cecilia Adapa rather should be answering where she got those millions of dollars and Ghana cedis and gold and all those things from. Because as far as we are aware, right now as we all sit here, and it's not been controverted, OSP's investigations show that Cecilia Adapa can't explain the source of the money. We all know at one point she did cosmetic business. 2 of them, they didn't check out. Then the next thing she said, her deceased brother, the shoemaker, and please, with all due respect, I'm not denigrating these shoemakers. I'm just narrating the story. That the shoemaker had all those millions of dollars. Then when the widow of the shoemaker decided to sue, then she backtracked from that story. Can you imagine this comedy of errors? And yet we are prosecuting Patience Butchery. What? Cecilia Adapa should answer for that money first. So in law, what usually you do is that you look at the bigger fish, then you use the small fish to help you catch the bigger fish. Yes, Patience Butchery, if she took the money, if she did, that's a matter before court. We can look at that later. But the bigger picture is that how did Cecilia Adapa get this money? So far, she's not been able to explain by all the investigations. So we can think that she definitely has done something wrong, right? And we know that she was in positions where she could access her public funds. Well, so our suspicion, yes, she was a minister. So if we say we suspect that it's her public funds, it's a reasonable suspicion. It's not defamatory. No. Oh, sir, as a lawyer, I know what I'm saying. I get the point. She had access to her public funds because she's a minister. She awarded contracts, etc. So directly or indirectly, that was access, right? So if we see her with money, it's reasonable for us to think that it's our public funds.
Well, the reasonable suspicion must be pinned by some fact.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That is why the court will prove.
Yes, so we are saying that so far that she's not been able to explain the source of the money, that is where we should be interested in, not the prosecution of Patience Butchery. No, that's not the prosecution of Patience Butchery. Patience Butchery wasn't near any government funds. Patience Butchery was not put in any public office. Patience Butchery never awarded any contracts, etc. World Bank contracts to work on the Odo River, etc. Patience Butchery never went near that, right? And you see how citizens put it on social media that they are thinking is that that's the World Bank funds, right? So we should be interested in that investigation first. As for Patience Butchery, those are small fishes. Let's get the big fish. Like the way we say, a fish rots from the head. So tackle the root cause, not symptoms. So if anything at all, Patience Butchery is a symptom. Cecilia Adapa herself is a disease. So tackle the disease, not symptoms. So don't let the cure be worse than the disease. The disease is Cecilia Adapa. Tackle Cecilia Adapa, not if anything at all the symptoms. All right. And that brings me finally. You know, she awarded another contract that is bringing a lot of problems. Filtration of water around Teshi from the sea. It's a big problem. Godfrey, that means start on it. There's AG's opinion. As we go along, I'll read it for you. Where Cecilia Adapa awarded a contract. The contract wasn't executed, causing financial loss. Right now, the contractor has her money and has 6 cars. Okay? 6 cars. The sanitation agencies asking that they should bring back their cars. They are not doing. And all of this, Godfrey, that means sat on them. Alfred Ocansey sat on that, didn't reveal that to the public. He gave an opinion
send us,
that, yes, I'm sending the AG's opinion, that we should recover our money from them. And why didn't Alfred Ocansey sue? Why, whilst his government was in power?
Okay.
He signed an opinion saying that, that money, what the other part did in that contract was bad, so the contractors have our money, and yet he did not sue to recover. He gave an opinion that the money should be returned. If you say money should be returned and it has not been returned, what do? You sue. Yeah, Alfred Ocansey didn't sue. I'll read portions of his opinion. I'm sending it to you as we go along.
As this
so, Sister Adapadia, we are not done with her. We are not done at all. No. You will hear more and more about her.
That's why I asked you a question about the status of the court cases that you say that you are pursuing in that regard. So we'll take the box on that. Let me welcome Dr. George Domfe. He is an economist also at the University of Ghana, Legon. Dr. Domfe, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Alfred.
If you could, yes, kindly close the window behind you, or having some the lights, that's the sunshine behind you is, yes. Please help us with that. Okay, great.
Let me stay.
Let me also welcome Senor Hosi. He is a financial analyst and one of the conveners for the One Ghana movement. Joining us in the studio. Senor, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
A pleasure, Mother Mai. It's always a good time to be here.
Great. Listening to the finance minister, Tuesday present the 2025 budget. Briefly, so start off with you, Dr. Edo Susakodia. Is this a good budget, or a budget that also falls short of the expectations that you had, as the minority has described it?
Well, thank you, Alfred. The budget largely met my expectations. It also met the expectations of many Ghanaians. The budget sought to fulfill most of the campaign promises, even those that they could not start in 2025. They mentioned them, like the Women's Bank, like the big push, like the 24-hour economy. The budget also touched on stability. It was largely a stability budget. They focused more on fiscal consolidation. And the minister said they're going to do the fiscal consolidation from the angle of spending cuts. And indeed, they cut the expenditure, government expenditure, by 10 billion cedis compared to 2024 out 10. The budget also focused on macro stability, bringing down inflation, exchange rate, so that businesses could build capital and flourish, because the government felt that their kind of investments would not be that much. So therefore, they leave room for the private sector to build capital. In the classroom, when we teach that GDP is being determined by consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, and the net exports, the investment expenditure component has two angles, public and private. So when the public expenditure is not forthcoming, then you make room for private investment through macroeconomic stability. And so the government focused more on stability, allow the private sector, and less of its investment into that. The capital expenditure that we saw was just about 13% growth between 2024 and 2025, but as a percentage of GDP, it was a fair short of 0.1 percentage points. So the number of tax reliefs, people were celebrating on the streets, the scrapping of betting tax, e-levy, but I suggested that they could change the structure of those taxes without eliminating them completely. But they went ahead to eliminate these two taxes, and then they gave indications of how they were going to look for a replacement through tax refunds reduction as a ratio of tax revenue, and also through the increment of the taxes in the mining sector. I think my brother Pebu talked about it, Martin talked about it. There was also the uncapping of the earmarked funds, GET Fund, Road Fund, this was Assembly Common Fund. But my observations on those capping, I did a simple calculation You know, the capping came, the background for the capping was because of the rigidities in the budget. When we say rigidities, let me make it simple. When we say something is rigid, I cannot control. No, those rigidities didn't make the government have full control of the budget. They could not manipulate the budget with fiscal space. And so those rigidities came from, one, compensation to employees, two, debt service, which includes interest payments, and amortization. Amortization is the payment of principal. And then the third one is the earmarked funds, this is Assembly Common Fund, Road Fund, Get Fund, NHIL, etc. So the capping was done at 25% of tax revenue, so government could have more room with their discretionary expenditure to manipulate. You know, the essence here is to get more room to manipulate the economy. And so if you uncap, then you are increasing the rigidities. But I did some simple calculations, and I realized that the uncapping rather made rigidities less, because in 2024, rigidities were around 90.4%. In other words, by the time the government pays compensation of employees, debt service, which includes interest payments and amortization, and then the earmarked funds, which includes the District Assembly Common Fund, Road Fund, Get Fund, about 90.4% of the total revenue and grants are consumed, leaving only 9.6% for the government to manipulate the economy. But even with the uncapping, the proposed uncapping in 2025, the rigidities have fallen from 90.4% to 86.8%, leaving room for 13.2% for the government to manipulate. So I was surprised with this revelation by the calculations. So I thought that the uncapping rather increased the rigidities, but the uncapping has rather lessened the rigidities. Then I looked at the earmarked funds as a ratio of tax revenue, which was also the proposal for the for the capping, and the earmarked funds ratio of tax revenue was 30.8%. Then the uncapping reduced it to 28.7%. And this was also a surprising revelation. I thought the uncapping rather would increase it. But this is the trick. The capping they did at 25%, there was a clause in it that the Minister of Finance could increase it if they so desire. Could increase it if they so desire. So 25 but can be increased. So in 25, they increase it to 30. So they increase it by 5 percentage points if they so desire. The difference between that and the 2025 proposal is that the 2025 is putting it at 28.7%, which means that the Minister of Finance, after they pass the budget, they debate and pass it on the floor of Parliament, cannot increase it or cannot change it. It will stay at 28.7%. And there's no manipulation there. And that is the difficulty that this minister may face if they do the uncapping. I say may face. My suggestions on the revenue and then expenditure, I felt the minister could have at worst keep the expenditure at 2024 levels. But to cut it by 10 billion cedis was, for me, was very huge. But I understand them. I understand that, because if you keep the budget deficit that large, then you have to find a way to finance it. And at the point where you are not able to go to the Eurobond market to raise bonds, the financing will largely come from the domestic market. That might have informed them. But the reason I'm concerned about the huge cut is that government expenditure stimulates the economy by about 42%. In other words, if government spends 1%, just by its expenditure of 1%, it will increase growth by 0.4%. It will have an impact on the economy by 0.42%. So we always expect the government to be prudent and spend on roads, railway, lights, water, so that it could stimulate the economy. So if you reduce the expenditure, then the stimulus package is being reduced. No wonder they revised the growth rate downwards from 5.7% 2024 to 4.0%. So going forward, we may see an increase in the expenditure. The 24-hour economy that I'm mentioning this not for political purpose, but for economic purpose, because the economic transformation agenda, as stated in the budget, is anchored on the 2024 or the 24-hour economy program or policy. And the 24-hour economy policy was only mentioned in the budget, it did not have a full program. It wasn't resourced. Maybe it will come during the mid-year budget or 2025, but for 2026. But for 2025 budget, as we are discussing, it was just a mere mention, no allocation, no policy in there. The Women's Bank again was mentioned, a seed money of 51 million, but I know that the minimum capital requirement for a bank is 400 million. Perhaps this Women's Bank will receive preferential treatment in its establishment.
Or maybe a lower tier bank than
maybe,
a commercial bank.
Maybe because it's a special bank, it may get some special attention. They have a $10 billion big push as financing for their infrastructure. $10 billion. Yes, $10 billion.
In the budget? No, it's not the budget.
No, I'm saying that they mentioned.
That's a program.
So I'm talking about the things they mentioned which were not fully, didn't have full backing. I mentioned the 24-hour economy, which was just mentioned. It didn't have resource allocation and all that. The Women's Bank was also mentioned with a seed money of 51. My concern was that you needed 400 million to set up a bank. And then they have $10 billion big push. Yeah. It's stated in their budget, in their manifesto. It was repeated in the budget. But I wrote it somewhere. The allocation was $876 million out of the 10 billion. So we all know that we voted for them for 4 years. So my understanding is that they want to start gradually. They are starting with $876 million this year. And then the remaining 9.2 billion will be found somewhere in future to address. So these are my very main concerns. And then COVID-19 levy, I suggested before the reading of the budget, and I'm going to repeat my position that it should not be scrapped. We could rename it and use it for health-related issues. NHIS covers about 90% of all diseases. Maybe we could increase the coverage. We are talking about dialysis and all that. A portion of it could also go to financing health infrastructure. Last 2 weeks, we had the Minister of Health, lamenting about how the financing gap for the Agenda 111 that he came to inherit. We could keep the COVID-19 levy and use maybe 60% for infrastructure and 40% for healthcare, because the COVID-19 levy is raising as much as the royalties from the minerals. You check the figures; they are so similar. The entire royalties that we gain from the minerals without oil are similar to how much COVID-19 is raising. So I feel they should keep it. If they scrap it, then they should go back and double the royalties in the mineral sector. And my friend Martin talked about it, and I so agree with him. If you want to revenue, you tax the areas that have high revenue generating potential. You tax the aspect of the economy that is growing. IMF has already projected that the extractive sector of Ghana will grow by 12% average. So if you want money, that's where you go to.
Well, but the mining sector players are not happy.
Why should they be happy? Who is happy to pay tax?
2 days ago,
who is happy to pay tax?
I sat through a conversation with the Chamber of Mines. They are not excited about this because of a number of things. First off, they say that what concerns them most is that the lack of consultation.
Okay.
They were aware of companies actively seeking investors to expand their operations.
Okay.
And take advantage of high gold prices. Some of these investors had even approached the Chamber of Mines. Yet, without warning, government introduces a policy or an increase in the tax, with the growth and sustainability tax from 1% to 3% without consultation. That's their concern. And they were only informed briefly on Monday around 5:30 p.m. with no clear explanation of the basis for the decision.
Yeah.
So that's one of their major issues.
For consultation argument, I agree with them, because you have to talk to them. You could have even gotten better or higher figure if you had consulted them. But we must also, on a negotiation table, we must come from our side of the story. Ghana is the #1 producer of gold in Africa, and #6 in the whole world. Last year, we produced 4 million ounces of gold, valued at $6.2 billion. This is what we have as a country. We must leverage it. We must leverage it and then get more from it. As it stands, all monies put together, we are not getting the amount of money that we are supposed to get. So, if government is increasing tax, and I'm proposing an increment in their royalties, if they want negotiations, of course, we have to sit with them. You propose 15%, they say, hi guys, we cannot pay 15%, we can pay 10%, then we conclude on the 10%. So consult them and negotiate. But whatever the case may be, the extractive sector of this country is what we must leverage. Nigeria is doing 51% participation interest in their oil. Botswana is doing 55% in the participation interest in their diamond. Ghana is doing 16% in the participation interest. So we cannot do things as usual. Nigeria has capped their public debt at 40%. 40%, the composition of the public debt capping is 70% domestic, 30% external. How are they able to do it? Nigeria is only bigger than Ghana in terms of GDP and population, but on per capita terms, we are better than them. We have a higher HDI score than them. We have a higher per capita index than them. Our education, University of Ghana is ranked the first or the best university in West Africa. They are not better than us on per capita terms. What they are doing best, in fact, if you look at their oil sector contribution to GDP is 5%. Ghana's oil sector contribution to GDP is also 5%. Their oil contribution to export is around 68%. Our extractive sector contribution to export is 68%. The difference is that they have enough revenue from their oil. We don't have enough. The total contribution of Ghana's extractive sector to our revenue is only 15%. 15%. Okay. So there's a lot we can do. I chanced on the research by IFS, and I've said it, and I'm going to repeat it, that between 2011 and 2018, the economic rent of the extractive sector in Ghana, this is economic rent, not sales. Now, the economic rent is how the economists calculate profit, because we take into consideration the opportunity cost of capital. Right. Though if it was an accountant calculating it, the profit would have been higher, because they don't deduct capital opportunity cost of capital from it. Now, the economic rent that we were able to calculate between 2011 and 2018 amounted to $43 billion, not cedis. $43 billion. Ghana government's share was just 10.4%. That's $4.2 billion. So this is the issue. They enjoy so much economic rent. They enjoy so much profit. We produce more gold than anybody in Africa. Well, and so we should come from our angle. Where your mouth is. Of course.
If you're asking for more, then also you should be ready to take up part of the cost of.
I agree that we must invest
operating in that sector.
I agree because if you listen to the experts, I am not an expert in the energy sector, but I listen to them, and they have given us 3 types of contracts. The best one is a service contract. That's what Norway, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, USA, China, they are all doing. Russia. The service contract is that you come and extract my minerals, you give it to me. I am the country, I own the minerals. I pay you the services that you've rendered, the cost of extracting the mineral. If it's 2 billion, I pay you your 2 billion, you go, I take my gold. Now, the second best type of contract is the partnership. The partnership there, and in the villages, we have Abunu and Abusa. We have our gold, you come and extract, we share. Botswana is doing that, 55%. Nigeria is doing that, 51%. The third contract, which we have signed, which is not the best, which is the least of all, is a concessionary one. And so if you want the best, as you are saying, we must then change the style of the contract, the type of the contract. The government of Ghana must be also ready to invest in the cost of extraction, because somebody also cannot come with their capital and then invest. I listened to GMPC and they say that the cost of exploration, digging one well, is this 6 million? Yeah, 61. So 61 million, yes. Let's say $60 million.
$60 million.
You are searching for one drill, boom. 60 million, boom, another one, 60 million. You do 10, that's $600 million. If you don't find oil, you've lost. So this kind of huge risk, that is why in the 60s, we were brainwashed by the Bretton Woods institutions that governments in Africa should not go into the strategy because the risk there is so much. But these guys have made profit. I just mentioned to you between 2011 and 2018, they made huge. So we should not be afraid as a country to invest. Let's find money somewhere. If we were able to go to the Eurobond market to raise 13 billion, now we owe them $13 billion. If we could have used half of the 13 billion to go into the extractive sector to bear part of the cost and increase our share, by now we'll be enjoying half of the $43 billion economic rent instead of just 10%. So for the extractive sector, if you ask me as an economist, I don't see anywhere else that the finance minister is going to get huge money to change this country, to transform this country. We are projecting to be a first world by 2057, which is about 32 years away from now. The plan is that Ghana should be a high-income country by the time we are 100 years. I don't see where else you are going to get the money for that railway construction, for that bridge, for that airport, for that metro bus or public bus system, for that education. The only hope that I have is the extractive sector. So beginning from today, the conversation should be, how do we get the best from our extractive sector? Nigeria is capping their public debt at 40%. We were doing 70-something%. Thank God that due to the debt restructuring, it's falling to 61%. But we cannot do things as usual. I make reference, somebody would then ask me, then how do we cap our public debt? I make reference to two theses by Ghanaians. The first one about 15 years ago when I was in Kenya, by a Ghanaian PhD student. He concluded that the threshold, the public debt GDP threshold for Ghana should be 44%. That's a conclusion of the PhD thesis. Another one from an MPhil student from our department concluded that the threshold should be 44 to 46%. So both theses are concluding on 44%. Of course, Ghana is aiming at 55%, and then the threshold for ECOWAS is 70%. But we should limit those things and go back and mobilize revenues. We went to borrow. The capital market door was shut to us because they said that we could not service our debt. You are insolvent. You could not service your debt. Now, you can run to the moon and borrow. You will still be asked to come home and mobilize resources domestically. So we cannot run away from raising revenue domestically. There is no substitute for domestic resource mobilization. No matter how much we go to borrow, we will still come home and mobilize revenue domestically to service our debt. So for the natural resource, we must start the conversation on how to get the best from it. Change the contract style, change all the contracts, if possible, revise the existing ones. If it's not possible, then the subsequent ones, Ghana government must invest in the extraction so that we can enjoy the profit. Dr. Bawumia once said that the untapped resources that we have in our ground will be valued at $10 trillion. $10 trillion. This is almost half of the GDP of USA. So the untapped resources that we have in the ground. So there's a lot. They say that so what is remaining? $10 trillion untapped. We must find money somewhere. The minerals, investment, income, whatever, funds should find money and invest in extraction, increase our share, change our contract from concessionary to participation so that we can enjoy a greater part of the profit.
No, so very important points that you raised there, but it's just a fraction of the other issues. And Dr. Domfe probably would have you reposition. Please reposition for me because I still have the reflection of the light behind you. But I realized you wanted to make just a quick intervention about this extractive industry, this growth and sustainability levy, because Senior's previous life, I don't know if he's still in there, was heavy in the extractives with the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. But then again, you cannot discount the concerns that the Ghana Chamber of Mines, for instance, raises. The Association of Ghana Industry, they expressed the same concern. I mean, Suleiman Akone is quoted to have said that government had previously suggested only a marginal increase in the growth and sustainability levy. The decision to move from 1% to 3%, in his view, represents a drastic shift that could impact both existing and prospective investors, it's not a good signal for him, because really they're out there looking for investors, and then investors hear this, that you are increasing the levy in there because, yes, they understand the economy is struggling. But then again, there should be some extensive consultation even before the announcement. You don't think that they have a concern there?
Not
just a brief one.
Not that much. You see, the concern. You know what it is that if you compare all over the world, you see, businessmen, okay, businesses would always fight government the moment government seeks to implement any fiscal policies that will result in they paying more. It's simple. You know, Dr. Sarkodie mentioned it earlier. Who is happy to pay the tax? So all over, like I told you, I'm doing some studies in the North Sea. You check from the 60s till date, right? They've always been complaining. Anytime government brings any increment in taxes, they will complain. That's the white. So when I say the North Sea, you know, the UK, they produce oil too, far more than we do. At a point, they were, I mean, one of the world's biggest, right? But the production is declined. So if you study even the North Sea, from the 60s till date, the taxes, every time they are always complaining, always complaining. So one of the CEOs of the foreign, this certain Total Energies commenting that the UKCS is a noisy place to make business. That's talking about the way today, government says, I'll collect this, tomorrow I'll collect that. They are always collecting taxes from the companies, and the companies are always reacting. So culminating in the statement that that place is a noisy place to make business. So you go to America, you find the same. So Suleimana Kone complaining, it's normal of businesses to complain. The moment they see that even their profits will be reduced by even 1 cedi. That's the thing, though. Because sometimes you look at them, as I said, we can go on and on. There will be enough time, so let me cut down and move on. Sometimes you look at the kind of money they struggle with government in order not to pay. Small money that if you look at the size of the companies like Shell, BP, and you see the kind of money they are struggling with the government that will not pay this, will not pay that. You are worth billions of dollars and etc. You see, so please, when you hear businesses complain in Ghana, they are not alone. They always complain, So you should know that that's how they behave, and so you have to get tough, right? So this 2% tax, as I said, from what I'm reading elsewhere, it's a slap on the wrist. This 2% tax is a slap on the wrist. Well, let me go further. Look, research has shown that a lot of these mining companies, they are involved in transfer pricing. I don't want to name names, but there are documents. Recently, Lawyer Ankama and his group, okay, there is an initiative that Thabo Mbeki started. Long story short, they've done research that has shown a number of the big mining companies in Ghana, and they're paying taxes. It's a report. I will mention their names. And do you know what's happened? Look, when the report came, they challenged it. It went to Ali Nachia. Ali Nachia looked at it and said the report is good. Professor Ali Nachia, okay, the tax expert.
At the University of Ghana Law School?
Yes. Then from Ali Nachia, the Minister of Finance. Look, it's gone through various ombudsmen, various arbiters. They've all looked at the report and they said these are mining companies are paying far less taxes than they should pay. It's a full report. It's over 500 pages. So please, Kony mentioning he should tread cautiously. It's a very slippery slope. I'm sure very soon the report will be published, and then people would now start holding their stomachs like, why did we search for these mining companies to do this? So they shouldn't make noise. When they make noise and the report comes out, they won't be happy.
So much of the
they won't be happy. So they should tread cautiously
on this concern by the. Especially the companies in the mining sector about this increase in the levy. Just quick one, because we have a bigger conversation on the other aspects of the budget. Quickly.
Yes, it's when you look at it from here, it's always quite interesting. Yes, as much tax as you want to take, but a resource is only a resource when you can actually access and utilize it. You know, so yes, all the goals we have always been here. What has stopped us, because deploying investment has been quite a major constraint. So yes, I hear you very well. Our governments have proven not to be efficient operators of commercial activities. So that's out of the way. It doesn't make any prudent sense to really think that we can just start channeling our tax resource into it. But there are other ways to still achieve that. What you actually see all these companies come here, the Newmonts, and a lot of them are funded by their pension funds. There are all kinds of pension funds that drive it. It absolutely makes very little to no sense why the Ghanaian sector doesn't dominate the mining sector. Absolutely. And or the extractive sector, generally. We've been mining for over 100 years. We should have enough data to be able to minimize or de-risk investments, which could be partly and significantly led by pension funds. Our tax revenue will not be optimized by running it that way. I am very clear about that. We end up coming back to the same challenges we had with AGC some time back, the same challenges we've had with all our SOEs. They are all suboptimal, every one of them. There's no one SOE that is really optimal, and we can debate that any day. So Ghanaians must be at the commanding heights of these industries. We've had the likes of Ibrahim Mahama show some way. It's a contract miner. Mm-hmm. So you have the goldfields coming, then they call Ibrahim, we have de-risked the place, we've invested, this is what we want you to do. Come and do the work. Mm-hmm. What money is funding what he is doing? It is pension funds mainly, and of course you also have other venture capital funds also participating in it. What stops us with all this data to rather map out our concessions well and practically create a framework that helps us achieve that? We see the price of gold. We own the gold. If the money is going to come back to pension funds belong to everybody. You understand? But there's a lot more structured accountability, especially when you have tier 2 funds participating in it. Mm-hmm. Look at the investments SNIT has made. SNIT has been one of the most irresponsible organizations in this country. Mm-hmm. They should tell you the effective return on the investments we've had as SNIT. They are negative. Negative. They are negative. The real returns on our investment through SNIT are negative. But the real investment returns on our pension funds, tier 2 pension funds that are privately managed, all right, are very positive. SNIT is a disgrace. Oh, it is a disgrace. You know, unfortunately, the NDC has inherited a bigger disgrace, though. But it's been years of us abusing such resources. Look at the investment it deploys. When government has any kind of policy it wants to really run and is quite social in nature, with private capital easily not good, and then they carry SNIT because they can direct it. And I actually blame the TUC and co for allowing politicians to dominate and control the space around their pension funds, especially the 13% SNIT one. Why do we have the tier 2 funds doing so well and SNIT not doing that well? Mm-hmm. And SNIT has been collecting, it was collecting both for all this while. But if we had been strategic and actually had our pension funds, and SNIT in particular, unlock things like our extractive sector, for oil, don't go there. But mining, I beg you in the name of God, there's no reason why we shouldn't be. We would have been retaining more of the wealth in our country, creating more investment avenues, minimizing our exposure on our or the challenges we have around our FX. That's why I support the government's policy on the gold board. All right, I fully support what government is trying to do there. It's just that we must all watch and make sure that it is structured well. We don't have another cocoa board on our hand. But I think that this is relatively different. There's a lot of space in there. So we can dominate that. I didn't see these interventions which will rather restructure the economy. All right? And that's why you are right by saying that the budget is a stability budget. And you must look at the budget in that total context. What is this budget supposed to achieve? This budget will not drive its own brain. It will drive the brain inherited from the contracts and arrangements we have with the IMF, which is to get us to achieve debt sustainability. There was a major flop last year with this huge deficit of 7.2. or 7.5, whichever it is. All right? The debate from the minority, I don't think is here or there. Let's just face our problem as a country, admit our errors as a people, and correct them. It's not time for anybody to be jumping and trying to do some showmanship. The problems are real. If you have this level of deficit, you are definitely going to be retrogressing. The other thing you want to really look at is to compare this 2025 budget with the indicative budget, which was supposed to help us achieve sustainability. In fact, it's actually the main basis you should be looking at. Because the IMF plan, which had that 5-year forecast, we are aiming to achieve what? By 2028, 55% general government debt, in PV terms, right? So there's a certain budget plan. Are we achieving that? There are interesting things, and that's why this budget also looks quite ambitious. On that indicative, we're looking at about 211 billion. But this budget is actually looking at revenues being at 224.9. So that's 225 billion. All right. On a debt, on a revenue to GDP ratio, we are now looking at 16.1 versus 17.3, which also creates room for better performance if that GDP is achievable. Okay. So you see some efficiency that in the ambition of government. Right. The other bit you want to look at is back to our debt situation. That debt structure right now, with the deficit you had, I'm talking about the budget, looking at it from the indicative sector.
I'm going to get into the debt bit with you. I want you to just hold on a bit for me on that debt matter. And Dr. George Donfe is better now. I think the Zoom is better. But also acknowledge the presence of Phyllis Kwatiofosu, who is the Minister in charge of Government Communication and spokesperson to President John Dramani Mahama, MP for Brasebo Kwamankese constituency. Felix Kwatiofosu, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
No, good morning, Alfred.
It's good to have you. Now, these are the taxes that were announced to be abolished, because they are still on our books until the bills that have been submitted. In fact, 8 of them, the finance minister did present or submit them in Parliament on Thursday. So for the first reading. So it's going to go through a process until that process is done and eventually Parliament passes these bills into law. The 10% betting tax is still on our books. E-levy, 1% to be abolished. Emissions levy on industries and vehicles, that was not collected, it was never implemented because the DVLA and the collecting institutions did not really finish their calibration and other processes to collect them. The VAT on motor insurance, the minority says there's no record of it being collected, so why are you abolishing it? 1.5% withholding tax on unprocessed gold sales to be abolished, and COVID-19 levy, Dr. Edosu Sarkodie thinks that the decision to abolish it is not one that he agrees with. It's not well thought through. It should rather be renamed or rebranded, Professor. Yes, and so these are the Dr. Donfe. But before we hear from him, yes, great. Great, and let's hear Dr. Mohammed Amin on this betting tax and the confusion that ensued after the budget was read. Take a look.
Betting tax that they said they have abolished. We never collected betting tax. We never implemented the betting tax. So to come and tell Ghanaians that you have abolished something that was not implemented is to deceive the people of Ghana. If you know that betting tax is different from other taxes on lotteries, and the minister in the same statement sought to equate the two, then I needed to explain that the betting tax he was referring to had actually not been implemented. And I've listened to myself again. I've listened to the statement, and it appears the statement created an impression that I meant betting tax as it relates to bet winnings was not implemented. If that's the impression that was created by my statement, then that was inaccurate on my part. But what I really wanted to say was that what he called betting tax, as in taxes on lotto winning, was not implemented.
So So that's the immediate past Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam. The first video you saw was the press conference he addressed after the budget was read. He made a statement, and that was inaccurate. 2 days later, he says he's listened to himself, reflected, and realized the statement that he made created a wrong impression, was inaccurate, and he's taking those words back, but still asking questions of the Finance Minister because of how this betting tax was announced, especially the withholding tax on lottery, otherwise known as betting tax. The withholding tax on lottery is a broader one, different from the betting tax. That's the explanation that he was looking at. But was there really any confusion of a sort? Dr. Donfe.
Yeah, Alfred, let me thank you very much and also say very good morning to our panelists. Senior was my president in Biafra and also my EMH. That's how come there, we're working together. And my new
Yes, your good friend Martin Pebu in
I'm your good friend.
Yes.
Also, the Biafra Hall.
Yes, the immediate past finance minister got it wrong. He was misled by Dr. Ocansey, who also got it very wrong. I think his speech item number 141, section I, he said that they were going to abolish 10% withholding tax on lottery winnings. And to me, that was very unfortunate because that lottery winnings, the 10% withholding tax was never implemented. And he went on to say that otherwise known as betting tax. And so I have serious problem with the two finance ministers. The one who just says it, the one we just listened to. I'm wondering why he would have to, if he was misled by Ato, he would have to follow. And also, we say two wrongs don't make right. And so I was expecting him, having been there for long, to tell us that Ato got it wrong by saying that 10% withholding tax was the same as a betting tax. The two are very different. And so for the betting tax, yes, we implemented it, but the withholding tax is different, and Ato got it wrong. I think he should have taken his time to respond to me. If he has done this, I don't think the confusion that has come with this would have been there in any way, because for almost 2 days, all we heard about was about this confusion. So the very positive things and other things in the budget that we needed to talk about. I mean, everybody was talking about who was lying. But if he has boldly come out to admit his fault, I expect Dr. Ato force him to also do same. I haven't heard from him. Maybe he has done that, but he also should do same, because it was very unfortunate, statement to say that 10% withholding tax is going to be abolished. If that statement had ended, that would have been fair to Ghanaians, and then you went on to say that otherwise known as betting tax. In other words, you were equating 10% withholding tax on lottery winnings to betting tax, which was very wrong and very, very unfortunate. Let me quickly begin my discussion, because I have to run to
yes, I acknowledge that.
Yeah, I'm on the face, so you should forgive me. That's my duty call. I'm on the field and I have to rush to So let me begin to say that the budget entirely, if you ask me to assess it, I would say very positive, and very positive because if you look at it, it didn't deviate much from, in terms of the policy direction, the core policy direction. It didn't deviate much from the 2023 media review and also 2024 budget. And this is mainly because of the PCPEG, that is the post-COVID program for growth. We all remember what happened to our economy the year 2022. Things were very bad, and immediately we had to go to IMF. And when we started engaging with them, because of the past experience, we've gone to them 16 times. And the past experience significantly was that anytime they would tell us what we should do with the assistance they give us, and we end up, and when they are there, we do well, but as soon as they go, we go back to where we were. And so that cycle has not been helpful. At the time, the finance minister of the day did so well. I'm talking about Honorable Ken Furiata, who put together a team, and I was always consulting some of us in academia. I remember Dr. Duke Sako, and quite a number of us were consulted when they were developing the PCPEG. And so the PCPEG, we told them what we wanted to do with their assistance to get us from where we were to a better place. And indeed, it really worked. When we started implementing the PCPEG during the middle part of the 2022, IMF immediately projected that the economy would grow 1.5%. By that year, we grew 2.9% above their prediction. Last year as well, the projection was around 4%, 4.1% or so, and we had 5.7%. And so I commend the government for not, saying we will not go forward with the PCPEG. After all, we don't change the winning team. If you have a program that is delivering, why do you throw it away? And so they did very well for still keeping them.
Hello?
Myself under the IMF and for that comment. Hello?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. And they're using the same PCPEG, so that one I want to commend them. They didn't change things much. I think that most of the things that we heard that were very different from the 2024 budget happened to be the lamentations and also the taxes. If you took these things away, you see that things didn't change much. And that's why I talked about the core policy direction has still been maintained. And that to me is very, very fruitful. But lamentation, was he wrong or right to tell us that he inherited a very weak economy? I think that has always been the story. John Adekunkufo did it. John Evans Atamils did it. And President Mahama himself did it. And unfortunately, I remember in his last State of Nation address after he lost 2016, he had to tell Ghanaians where he picked the economy from and where he left it. He indicated that he inherited an economy with high levels of inflation and high levels of debt from his boss, the late Professor Mills. And when he said this, I looked around and said, how could this be possible? Because at the time Professor Mills died, unfortunately, may his soul rest in perfect peace, inflation at the time was 9.4. June, the last inflation that was reported before he died, June 2012, inflation was 9.4. And President Mahama had ended the year. Of course, it was later that it came out, but inflation had always been high. In fact, during his time, it even went to 17.something%, I think 2015 or so. So the 20s, at the time he was talking, inflation was even in the regions of 17. But 2016, it dropped actually to 15.4. And here he was, blaming the economy he inherited as having high levels of inflation. Compared to what was the prevailing inflation at the time, I think that statement wasn't, I'm sure for Mason, his grave will not be happy with that. Again, at the time Prof. Mason died, Ghana was out of debt crisis. And I asked Dr. Sakode rightly put it, and I quite agree with him. We use 3 thresholds in measuring debt sustainability. If you use the WAMI one, is they look at debt to the GDP at 70%. As soon as you go beyond 70%, you are in debt crisis. And IMF puts it at 60, and Ghana, we put ours at 55. He says somebody did something at his department and the person is even putting it lower. I think I agree. We say 55. And so if you look at all these figures, was Ghana in debt crisis at the time President Mahama left? And the question is yes. 2014, debt to GDP ratio, he inherited from before at 32 after COVID. Our debt to GDP ratio came down. So there was enough fiscal space. That was 32. But 2014, it has gone to 71. It went further to 72.8, 2015. And 2016, it was 73.1. And so for the last 3 years of his government, Ghana was in deep debt crisis. And he acknowledged when he said that Yahweh and I'm penning Yamanaka and that was one of the reasons why we had to run for cover from IMF. And so the lament. Hello,
Dr. Donfe. unfortunately, we
It says concern price.
Yes.
Later, in 2018, we rebased the economy. And so what would have been 73? Yeah, I'm running through, please. I'm running through. I'll finish.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. The connection to you keeps freezing every now and then. But then you made the point about the debt to GDP in 2016, and then what they are inheriting now in 2025, 61.3. But the 2016 debt to GDP that you mentioned, that was before rebasing. So
yeah,
after rebasing, yes, because after rebasing, it came down to 56.3. Correct?
No, Alfred. After rebasing, that was the point I was going to make. After rebasing in 2018, yes. 2018 we rebased the economy and it became 24.2% bigger. And so once the economy base becomes bigger, debt to GDP ratio declines. And so when you look back to 2016, what would have been 73.1 became 55.9, almost 56%.
So that's what I wanted us to establish, so that because the figure you mentioned was before the rebasing, correct?
Yeah, but Alfred, when you are in government and later another government comes to rebase your economy, you don't use those rebase figures to talk about how the situation you left, because
why is
73, 71. Yeah, let me come, Alfred. The 71 was the reason why Ghana was plunged into debt crisis in 2014, 2015, 2016. Indeed, as we speak, Alfred, we've now moved to 2013 concern crisis. But as we speak, Ghana's fiscal service is in the process of rebasing the economy, which suggests that the 61 we are seeing today will even go down further after they are rebased. And I don't expect Akufo to come and tell us that he left something lower than 61. No, we will not accept it. When we were at Legon, I think you needed to 70 at the point was A. At the point they said 80, you needed 80 to get A. So those who had 79 and they had B plus those days, you can't go back and ask Legon to change it and give you A. No, because that was the threshold. That was how things were, so that kind of debate, the politicians can go away with it. But for us, economists, we don't do that. Why normally we want to go to pass and rebase all the figures so we can use that one to compare our situation to see where we are faring. But you as a politician, your time it was 73. And that 73 was the reason, was the basis for the IMF describing our economy as highly indebted. It was the reason that all the development partners describe our economy as highly indebted. We have gone past that period. So you don't go back to use the current rebase. And so I'm saying that if you look at current one, that is 61.8%, far away from the 73, that you left. And then you looked at this, and I'm finance minister, you tell Ghanaians that you have inherited an economy in crisis. And the only example you cited was debt. Then I have a problem with that kind of, logic, because our debt sustainability, that is 55, we are almost there. We shouldn't forget that at the end of the year 2023, debt to GDP ratio stood at 68, and it had dropped so significantly to 61, and that's 61.8. That's not the end. It will even go further because the debt restructuring is still bringing a lot of positive things, and so it will still go further. And an IMF threshold of 60, we are almost there, 61.8 and 60. We've gone, and so it is important that the politicians, they begin to, honor those. It's always, there's a popular adage that I like it, that we should, clap for those who do well, And so it is, we shouldn't always be talking about our opponents, they didn't do well. Sometimes let's try to take few seconds to acknowledge some of the good things that they have done. Alfred, going back to the taxes, I like all that my fellow panelists have put out there, but they concentrated mostly on the extractive sector. And I tell you, I agree with them. So increasing growth and sustainability levy from 1% to 3% is good. This will help us get more from the gold increases in the recent increases in the gold prices. And I think I support them. But I must say that I haven't heard any of them talk about an e-levy. But as much as I sit here, I think that an e-levy shouldn't have come. Yeah, of course, they campaign with it, and it is right politically that they scrapped it. But economically, I thought we could have done something about it. If the current 1% is higher, we could have reduced it to about 0.5 because it's very potential. And Dr. Dusakode noted, and I agree with him, that in economics, you tax the growing, activity, any economic activity that is growing. That is where you move and you tax it. This Momo is growing, but if you are not also careful, it can be counterproductive. So you need to weigh between the two and see where you can get your money. Today, I'm so happy to hear from my friend Martin that nobody is happy to, pay taxes. It is true. Nobody, including the household, everybody. In fact, we would have even been much, all of us would be happy to see that all taxes have been scrapped. But unfortunately, the last time I checked, manna rained when the people of Israel were moving from Egypt to the promised land. Since then, manna had never rained. And so, if manna is not rain, you can only develop through internal generation of resources. Even if you borrow, you still will need internal generation of resources to pay. And almost every year, in no time, you see Ghanaians, they will begin to blame this government for now. They have their honeymoon. In no time, you see how people are going to, blame them. And I've always said that since 1957, 61 years of our life, we haven't done so much. It's not so much because we are not doing what is right today, but we have failed to do the right thing for many years. And then and the evidence of that is what is being reflected today. And so almost every government will come, and every Ghanaian will blame that government because we have huge infrastructure needs. I like what Dr. Adusakode put it. Huge infrastructure needs. I was part of the committee, the economic committee, that 2003 was put together, I think December, to look how we can be where we want to be by the year 2057. Ghana, we want in 2057. And we looked at all the various economic planning, Barredo at 100, under NDC, Ghana at 40, Senche, all of them, Ekufado's Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. We looked at all of them, and then we came, and we didn't, it was at Lisa Hotel when we met Ghanaians. But the only politician that came there I saw was Professor Jambafo, who was the chair. But later this month, Susubribi Nana Krobi Asante, I think he was one of the guys who helped with our current constitution. They were the people who controlled the whole event under the auspices of the late Dr. Abraham Pamenza Abraham.
But before you go, so you made the point, and as you're concluding, that the caption, as was announced by the finance minister, Dr. Kasela Tofosen, since Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam has apologized, you expect Dr. Kasela Tofosen to also apologize for how he announced the decision to abolish the betting tax. This is what he said exactly, and so I want to find out what you are asking him to apologize for, and we're going to put that on the screen. He says, quote, "We will abolish the 10% withholding tax on winnings from lottery, otherwise known as betting tax." That's the announcement he made. What exactly do you want him to apologize for?
I've heard. What the document that I have here, the sentence didn't end there. He continued and said, otherwise known as betting tax.
It's there. I read it as well.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that bit. So, if you did that, then everybody listening to you would think that 10% withholding tax is the same as betting tax. Really? And I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that is where the finance minister, the immediate past, got it very wrong. And when he heard that, and that's why I said that two wrongs don't make right. I would have explained that the 10% withholding tax is very different from the betting tax, and so they are not the same. And that we implemented the betting tax, but the the 10% withholding tax, we never implemented it. I think if he had said this, it wouldn't have led all of us into that confusion. And so the equation of our betting tax to 10% withholding tax on lottery winnings is a problem I have with the minister's presentation on that bit.
I see, which you want him to apologize for. Phyllis Kwachofo, so that's he says, well, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam has done the needful. Acknowledge that he misspoke or he misrepresented the facts, so he's apologized for it. Because there's evidence that, yes, the betting tax was collected as far back as some part of 2023 into 2024. We have the GRA documentation to that, which we'll put on the screen as we go on. But he wants Kesla to force him to apologize.
First of all, it is a red herring. You know,
Why?
Of all the matters that should capture our interest in this budget, it is not what Dr. Donfe is saying. I mean, why should the finance minister come and apologize for removing the tax? And he spent considerable time on that matter. I was completely astonished as to why he thought it was such an important matter. When we were campaigning, everybody knew exactly what we meant when he said we were going to remove the 10% tax on betting winnings. That's what the finance minister did. Dr. Amin Nanta misspoke, but I don't think that was a substantive matter. There are bigger issues in this budget. And with the greatest respect to him, I think we should veer into those matters that matter. Again, I've been completely shocked by his attempt to make excuses for the MPP and create the impression that the economy that we inherited is one to write home about. And he dwells on debt to GDP ratio. I don't know whether he's taking a look at the numbers. Look, this is a government that itself went into an IMF program and made specific commitments to meet some targets in order that confidence is restored to this economy. A day before the budget, the Statistical Service reveals that there's been a nominal expansion in our GDP. Even that stems from some of the happenings, the rate of inflation, the level of depreciation and all that. And he is an economist. He knows that GDP is nothing more than an aggregation of all economic activity, which you put a monetary value on. And therefore, when inflation soars, your prices increase. You are going to have that kind of nominal effect. It doesn't mean that in real terms, you've achieved any substantial growth. Everybody also knows that debt to GDP ratio in itself says nothing. That is why you have countries that are developed, that have debt to GDP ratios exceeding 100%, 120%. It's not such a big deal. Because the rate at which they borrow is so low that debt service is not a problem for them. Some of them borrow as low an interest rate as 0.5%, 1%. We borrow 6%, 9%. The real problem is our ability to service debt. So how can anybody look at this economy?
If we could get 6%, Ghana will be fine. We don't even get
sometimes, yeah, sometimes 9%. Indeed,
it's not something
as of 2-3 years ago, it was over around 11%.
Exactly.
Very expensive debt.
The yields even hit 15.
And we are talking about a government that only 2 years ago defaulted on debt payments.
And just for the record, that's in dollar terms, so we just educate people well.
Yes, yeah. Which has led to serious strain in terms of our debt repayment. How can anybody look at this economy and say that we should not lament it? And Dr. Donfe says that the finance minister was lamenting the economy. So Dr. Donfe is happy about a country where the government itself sets a primary balance target of 0.5% surplus and achieves negative 3.9%. And if you know how important that is the main fiscal anchor of the IMF program. It is the #1 indication to the IMF and investors that we are back on track in terms of managing our country well. Yes. You've missed it by over 800% or 4.8 percentage points.
They even question that conclusion.
No,
they say that the review is yet to happen. In April.
No.
So why even go ahead?
But the IMF is only going to review the figures we give them. They are not going to manufacture any figures. Why? When the Ghana Statistical Service presented the GDP figures, they are happy to adopt it and run with it. Has the IMF reviewed that one? And you look at the deficit. They set a deficit of 4.2%. They achieved 7.9%. Indeed, in the last 3 years before last year, they scored double-digit deficit each year. In 2020, it was 15%. 2021, 12%. 2022, 12%. Last year, it was above 10%. And then 2024, 7.9%. How can anybody be happy about an economy like this? When we were living in 2016, it was 6.1%. In any event, this debt to GDP ratio they are talking about, Senor is here. He was active in the debate about the DDEP. The sacrifice that Ghanaians have had to go through in order to get that small debt relief is unprecedented. No Ghanaian government has subjected Ghanaians to what the MPP took us through in order to get that small debt relief. In 2022, our debt-to-GDP ratio was 104%, never experienced in about 20 to 25 years. So please, this economy is not in good shape, and let nobody attempt to water it down by singling out one parameter, which, through fortuitous reasons, appears to have eased. The currency, our cedi, depreciated by 19% last year. The previous year, it depreciated by 27%. At a point, it did 54% depreciation. So how can anybody look at these figures and say that they are happy? Because of the DDEP, do you know what they have done? In the next 4 years, we have to cough up 280 billion Ghana cedis to service debt. This year, already, we've paid about 6.1 billion Ghana cedis.
I showed the schedule of payment.
In July, August, we have to pay another 9.2%, 9.2 billion Ghana cedis. Next year, we have 140 billion Ghana cedis to pay in debt servicing. This will definitely create severe fiscal crisis for us, because all the revenue we will collect next year will be around 250 billion. If you are coughing up 140 billion of it to pay service debt alone, how can any economist look at this and say that our economy is in good shape and that the finance minister should not lament? So the finance minister should go to parliament and give a bouquet of flowers to the previous managers of the economy for this economy that we are talking about. Created very serious problems for bondholders. 1.3 million of them had to endure sacrifice, including pensioners. Do you know how much was involved in the DDP? 240 billion Ghana cedis.
So this is the schedule that you talk about.
240 billion Ghana cedis. Yes.
Service obligation.
So in cedi terms, for domestic debt service, we have to pay 150.3 billion over the next 4 years. In dollar terms, we have to pay 52 billion. Put the two together and see the kind of hole it will create in our finances. So how can anybody look at this picture and say that there was lamentation? In any event, don't you compare like for like? How do you compare a rebased economy to one that has not been rebased? The debt to GDP ratio for 2016 was 55.6%. That is what that indeed, if we were using the non-rebased figures for debt to GDP ratio, we would be around 120%. So there's no basis for that comparison. We didn't know what it was before we left power. By 2018, we knew. Yeah. In fact, the whole idea of rebasing is that there are aspects of the economy that you've not factored into your calculation. That's why it is done. And the IMF says we should do it, is it 5 or 10 years intervals?
10 years, yeah.
10 years intervals. 10 years. So I don't know what Dr. Donfer is talking about. Look, let us not pat the MPP managers of the economy on their back. They did terrible damage to this economy. And it was because of imprudent mismanagement of the economy, the deliberate waste of money on consumption expenditure in a manner that undermined our finances. That, look, all the problems we faced stemmed from 2020, the 2020 election. And
they disagree with you. They handed over an economy that is working.
No, my brother, I beg you. This one, I beg you. Alfred, please, I beg you. You are waking my team up. This one, I want to be okay. Stop.
Alfred, no. You see, the economy is not like your dress. You see, the economy is not like your dress.
We are all living in Ghana. We are not in space.
When you say an economy is doing well, you look at some parameters. Why? How can you have inflation hovering above 20% and say the economy is doing well? How can your currency have depreciated by the extent that it did last year and then you insist that the economy is doing well? If your economy is doing well, why did you take 240 billion Ghana cedis from bondholders? If they didn't do that, this economy would have collapsed. So the economy is not doing well. And the finance minister gave figures which they have not challenged. Look at the level of indebtedness of state institutions. Look at the arrears. As of now, 67 billion Ghana cedis is what has been verified. ECG alone, they have 68 billion Ghana cedis sitting on their debt, on their books. Cocoa board, 32 billion. How can you have a situation like that? And you know what that means? If Cocoa board is unable to pay, we have to foot the bill as taxpayers. Same for ECG and all the others. Why? To the extent that now, every ton of cocoa that is produced this year, farmers are going to lose $4,000 because of the mismanagement that has gone on at Cocoa Board and the effects that it has had. Look at our state enterprises. All of them in huge debt.
So that's what will be on the screen.
And somebody says that this economy is okay and the finance minister went to lament. When they're telling the story about the true state of the economy, become lamentation. Why? When President Akufo-Addo took over, did they not lament the debt ratio they came to meet? So why should the finance minister praise the MPP for this level of mismanagement? And Dr. Donfer would agree that we are in this situation because of fiscal recklessness. I was going to make the point that all the problems we are facing stem from over expenditure in 2020. And the way you see it is to look at the difference between your revenue and expenditure for any year. When we finished the election, it was 15% of GDP. And that is where the alarm bell started ringing. That is where the alarm bell... Look, in a space of 2 years, the Bank of Ghana itself said, investors spirited away over $6 billion from this economy because they didn't have confidence in us. That is how come our economy began to tank. Our currency began to depreciate so steeply that they had to run to the IMF. Was it not the same party that was demonizing IMF programs and said that going to the IMF meant that you were incompetent? Are we not under an IMF program? And we went to the IMF program in far worse condition than we did at any time in our history, perhaps except the early 80s. So let nobody attempt to sanitize what is a terrible situation. The second point also is that this budget shows that we are a government that is going to ensure fiscal discipline. If you look at the budget, the finance minister has made substantial cuts to public expenditure.
Well, that's almost 10 billion.
Especially, especially in the area of goods and services and capital expenditure, because that is where you have some discretion. Sometimes compensation, things are a bit rigid there. In fact,
capital
if you look
slightly higher.
If you look at our financial laws, you know the finance minister is given power to via some of the funds. In other words, he can move funds from one place to the other. Yes. But you are not allowed to touch compensation. It is fixed, rigid. But where, yes, no, you can, so sometimes you can even cut back.
You can via capital, but within another capital expenditure.
But salaries, across, you can't touch salaries. Yeah. It is so fixed. You understand? EMAC funds, sometimes even EMAC funds they touch it. Why? NHIL, what have you? Sometimes it doesn't go. Exactly, they cap it. You understand me? So the finance has introduced policies that ensure fiscal discipline, where often government tends to abuse this discretion. It's goods and services where there's some discretion. You can choose to spend or not to spend. And often, when you look at that part of the budget, governments often tend to exceed it. The finance minister has held things tight and indicated that he is not going to allow a situation where people award contracts left, right, and center. Look at the situation in the road sector. They have committed us to contracts amounting to 105 billion Ghana cedis. As we sit here, all of us know that the government of Ghana is not going to find 105 billion Ghana cedis to honor those commitments if they ever fall due.
So what are you going to do?
You are going to have to renegotiate. You are going to have to renegotiate to those who have those contracts, because they themselves should be aware that we are not in a position to honor those commitments. And there's a government that did this, that is getting praise, that we should not lament the state in which they left the economy. So they have done severe damage. And indeed, the people who went to vote, the Ghanaians who went to vote, felt it more than anybody else. Why do you think the Ghanaians voted with the anger that they did if things were kosher? Because we all lived it. Look at the cost of living crisis that the mismanagement has inflicted on everybody. How tough it is to live in this country. So please, when governments mismanage our resources in the manner that the MPP did, let us call them out. And let us not choose and pick and engage in nitpicking and go and isolate some indicator, which we don't even delve deep into, to justify a claim that the economy was left in good shape. The economy was not left in good shape by any stretch of the imagination.
With the expenditure cuts, earlier, Dr. Dosuk-Sagodi raised the concerns that to the extent that government expenditure stimulates the economy, stimulates growth, cutting expenditure by almost 10 billion cedis could stifle the growth that you have projected that you're going to.
Rafa, it depends on what you are cutting. It depends on what you are cutting. I would agree with the Edusa Akodi. If it is, for instance, if you invest in infrastructure, that is a significant investment. It's an investment that is likely to yield returns. For instance, we invested in the gas processing plants. If you look at their sales in natural gas liquids alone, forget about the lean gas that they process. That alone is a lucrative business. Today, Ghana Gas is able to supply us about half of our LPG needs. We would otherwise have imported it. In fact, because of the gas they produce, we have cut down on fuel imports for electricity generation by $300 million. So it is a significant investment.
Yeah.
If you do a major route, say between Accra and Kumasi, it facilitates movement. If you build airports, people are able to move to and fro much more quickly than they did before. So it will spur economic growth. But if you spend on consumption in a way that doesn't yield any significant dividends, you cannot say that it should not be cut. Let me give you an example. Do you know that ECG, as I speak, they have about 3,000 containers sitting at the Tema port. They have bought items that they will not require in the next 10 years, some of which will expire in 5 years. And because of that, they are attracting demurrage of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis annually.
1.5 billion cedis
Ghana cedis annually. That is expenditure. Demurrage. That is expenditure. But is it useful expenditure? How do you go and import items to the tune of 3,000 containers? Why you don't need them? For 10 years, they won't require those items.
And the HAPTEL contract,
that is waste, flagrant waste of public resources. That is not how you stimulate. Indeed, these items are imported. How has it helped the Ghanaian economy? If local manufacturers were doing the transformers and wires and the things that you needed, and you spent on it, perhaps you can talk about stimulating economic growth. But if you've gone to import items from China, how has the Ghanaian economy benefited? So please, let us not attempt to justify the wrongs of the MPP. The truth, and everybody would agree, that at least under the Fourth Republic, the economy between 2020 and 2024 has been the worst. All the indicators show it. And let nobody attempt to put a dampener on this.
It's a result of COVID-19.
Please,
Russia,
please, that is a hackneyed excuse that nobody accepts anymore. Why? COVID. Is Ghana the only country that COVID hit? Indeed, just after COVID, or in the heat of COVID, an analysis was made of the economies in sub-Saharan Africa. Ghana's economy was the worst. All our neighbors, all our neighbors did far better than we did. Even the deficit show it. If you have COVID, it is not a license to go and spend recklessly. Government's duty then was only to protect you and I by making investments in health such that the disease doesn't spread. Beyond that, you don't do things that you can't sustain. The truth is that there was an election. And that is why when you check Cote d'Ivoire's finances, you see that they don't have the deficit we had. The difference between them and us is that we had an election, they didn't. If we had stuck to just protecting people through expenditure in healthcare so that the disease had not spread, we won't incur the deficit we did. They went beyond that in a bid to win election. In fact, I would even have thought that they had learned lessons from the 2020 episode. If you look at the budget, you see that in 2024 they repeated it. That's how come we have the primary balance exceeding the target by 800%. And the deficit doubling. They programmed 4.2 in the budget. They've done 7.9%. That is huge.
Overall balance.
That overall balance. Yeah. I don't know what a primary deficit, primary balance is. It just looks at the difference between your revenue and expenditure.
Yes.
And then it takes out interest payments, which is statutory. Then it expresses it as a percentage of your GDP. The desirable outcome is a positive balance, which you call a surplus. But they have gone negative 3.9%. That is not a good story. And in fact, there's a reason why the IMF is focusing on this, because that's actually what shows whether you are being prudent or not. Look, before investors engage you, and Senor knows this, they look at how you are managing the finances. In other words, if they lend you money, the way you are managing your finances, are you able to pay back? And this is what they look at. They may ignore your debt to GDP ratio to the extent that you are able to service the debts, depending on the rates at which you borrow. But if they see that your primary balance, your deficits keep rising, they are not going to do business with you. And we suffered that right after the 2020 election. So please, this economy is not in good shape. It is verifiable on the face of the facts. Even in our lives, we all have noticed it. So let us credit the Bull of Ghana with a bit of respect and intelligence, and not tell them things that are not true.
Well, and then, no, I'll come to Dr. Don before I come to you. But there are some statistics and figures, in fact, I'm going to be posting that you may not find in the finance minister's statement that he read. The reason being the full budget document itself has further information. So I would urge our viewers and our listeners to go onto the finance ministry's website. The full budget has been uploaded there, so that you will follow me every step of the way. But this is what Felix Kwatiofosu has been talking about. And Dr. Donfe, now you have a quick response to this, and I'll come to you. This is not been disputed. The only thing the NPP says about this 67.5 billion is that you added some 49 billion which has not been audited. Because to the extent that the road sector has some 21 billion out of 67.5. I asked the finance minister, he says
the budgeting process hasn't changed since time immemorial. What happens is that all MDAs, that they actually do the commitments. Yes. The finance minister only pays.
That's all.
So when the budgeting process begins, they ask all MDAs to submit how much they owe to various stakeholders. So they do that.
Okay.
There has not been a time where a significant variation has been detected between what has been submitted and what is audited. Some of it has been audited, that's up to 67 billion. But in fact, even then...
So this 67.5 is a figure that has
verified.
Been audited.
It is verified. It's
okay,
verified.
That's fine.
The reason it is likely to rise when more auditing is done.
Okay.
So there's no history of significant variation that you can point to, for which reason you reject what MDAs bring you. You understand? In any event, even arrears, when you talk of arrears, they talk of certificates that have matured for up to 6 months. If you submit anything below 6 months, they don't classify it as arrears. So there are many of those that have not even been factored into the calculation yet. You understand me? So please, let us be fair to the facts and not create an impression that there's any excuse to be made for the state of the economy.
Right.
The way that things were managed under the previous government was bad. And the verdict is out there, it is clear. Why do you think that investors were shying away from our economy? And indeed, investors have ways of finding out the state of the economy, sometimes even before you make it public.
Okay.
The rating agencies, that's what they do. They look at your economic indices and advise investors whether this is a good investment destination or not. So when you see investors running away from an economy, you know that they know that things are not right.
Well, so 1.73 billion, we say, we understand, owed the IPPs, the independent power producers, $1.73 billion. Let's flip to the next one.
Yeah.
Let's flip to the next one. Some 68 billion, we understand. That's what you mentioned, the ECG debt.
And you know, they are... first of all, they undercollect ECG alone.
And with the HAPTEL contract, where they are leasing us,
ECG alone.
So let's flip to the next one.
Workers had sabotaged the IT system. And they brought HAPTEL.
Let's flip to the next. Let's go to the next. The 32 billion is COCOBOD debt, 32 billion. And some 5.75 billion cedis owed by the road fund as well. All of this has not been disputed as we speak. Dr. Donfe, what exactly is your response to this?
Yeah, my response is that my friend Felix is misleading the audience on the state of the economy. You know, I have never. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Alfred, are you there?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I've never said that our economy today is so much in good shape. I've said that while we are here, you cannot attribute it to just one thing. We have failed for the last 68 years to do what is right. I like where Alfred picked it from. And when, Felix picked it from, where in school, when we are teaching our students, and they are writing dissertation, they do literature review to tell us where we were, so that we can understand why we are where we are. He mentioned that the economy is in tatters because primary balance is in negatives. Hey, Felix, I will just quote Afenyo's.
Let's keep focus.
Until 2017, Felix, until 2017 was the first year in 15 years, the first time in 15 years that Ghana recorded positive primary balance. Go and check.
But what is the primary balance?
2017 was the first.
I think the focus now is about Dr. Donfe, what's the primary balance now?
Alfred.
Yes, what's the primary balance now?
Yeah, I'm coming. Alfred, he explained very well about the primary balance, so please allow me to flow. I'm saying that the primary balance that today is so much, he is accusing me for picking and choose. I didn't even talk about, a lot of figures. It was just the debt that I explained, which was true. You can't dispute it. But I haven't talked so much about other positive things that are happening today that he hasn't seen. But if he cares to talk about the primary balance, I'm telling him, go and check and come and prove me wrong that Ghana recorded the first positive primary balance in 15 years in the year 2017. And during those past 15 years, NDC was in government. He was even a deputy minister in that government. For the whole 8 years, they recorded negative primary balance. So if today we are getting negative primary balance of 0.9, it is not unusual. You know, so you can't talk about this and paint the picture as if the economy is in tatters. And when I go back to make reference to the past,
right? You
don't like it. The fact of the matter is that as a country, the positive primary balance. I'm coming. Alfred.
Yes,
Alfred.
right.
As a country, we struggle with a positive primary balance. Indeed, our best record was 2017, 2018, 2019, when we continuously recorded positive primary balance. It's something that doesn't happen to this economy. And so if you're talking about where we are today, it is important you understand, the word is understand, where we have been in order to appreciate why we are here. You know, some of us, we don't only look at what is happening today, but we look at what happened yesterday for us to appreciate what is happening yesterday. But if you talk only about, you know, negative primary balance is bad, they have recorded negative primary balance of 0.9%. Have you forgotten that the last 8 years of NDC government, they continuously recorded negative primary balance? There was never a year in the last 8 years of NDC that they recorded a positive primary balance. So get that understanding. Now,
okay, on that bit, I just wanted to.
I think I did this.
Yes, Doc, I wanted to. Also, no, you go on to the next, because you are moving to the next issue. I wanted to let you know that the 0.9 you mentioned, actually on the books, is actually 3.9. I don't know if it's just the mix-up in the computation that you may have
taking his words.
May have gotten wrong, but
I'm taking his words to suggest that. Even if it is so,
it is 3.9.
It's not unusual.
No, it is in the budget. I'm only quoting what is in the budget. No, hold on, gentlemen. I'm quoting what's in the budget. The primary balance is 3.9%, not 0.9. I just wanted you to note that.
Okay, so that is very high. Alfred, I'm saying that that is the nature of the Ghanaian economy. So don't come here and sit here and tell us today that you are recording negative primary balance for the first time. Indeed, in recent years, the only good time records was 2017, 2018, 2019. Ghana managed to record positive primary balance. All the others, negative. You should go back and look at them before he comes here to mislead the public. Now, let me go quickly to his debt to GDP ratio. Debt to GDP ratio, it was always, we always move the constant year prices, and he got it wrong when he said that the debt, the rebasing is capturing things that are not covered. No, maybe I wouldn't say he got it wrong. It wasn't complete, but that is right. But then it's changing the constant year that significantly will contribute to the size of the GDP. We were using 2006 constant prices, and that's how we do it. GDP is the total quantity of our item produced multiplied by the unit price, and always you have to pick 1 year's constant prices. Using 2006 constant prices, and today, for example, if I produce 2 bags of maize and 1 bag in 2006 was 3 cedis, then the total GDP, if I were the only Ghanaian or the whole Ghana is for me, and I produce 2 bags of maize today, and I'm using 2006 constant prices, and 2006 a bag of maize was 3 cedis, then the total GDP is 6. But we moved to 2013 constant prices, which is to suggest that if today I'm measuring GDP, I'll be using the 2013 constant prices. And that's why the economy became so huge. You know, apart from capturing those other things that were growing and they were not previously captured, the most important and the significant reason why 2018, the GDP became 24.2% bigger was the change in prices. And who doesn't know that 2016 prices were far lower than they were in 2013? So if you multiply, your GDP becomes huge. And that was the rebasing. So Kufuor came and met debt to GDP ratio at 182% in 2006 constant prices.
Okay.
Kufuor dropped it to 32. Kufuor dropped it to 32. NDC picked it, plunged the economy into debt crisis. 2014, 71. I talked about this. And they left it at 73.1. I'm fairly says, he doesn't know about it, but it was 73. And that was where we had to go to. So we're in crisis.
He didn't say he didn't know.
We
I think that I just wanted to. That's why I asked you.
No, he said.
That's why I asked you.
No, listen.
No, Dr. Dunford, we're having a conversation. I asked you questions so that you also answer. That's why I indicated to you in your first submission that when you mentioned that particular debt to GDP, I underscored the fact that it was before rebasing. You said that doesn't matter. Actually, it does matter if we are doing a whole scheme of analysis when it comes to the state of the economy. We cannot underscore the impact of the rebasing in calculating the debt to GDP. I think that's fundamental, is it not?
Alfred. Yeah, and Alfred, I did explain that after the rebasing, the debt to GDP ratio dropped. So what would have been 73.1% during President Mahamat became 55.9. I did explain that. I did not say that. But I also explained that you don't use that 55.9 as your debt to GDP ratio. Because at that time, we were using 2006 concern prices. Today, we are using 2013. In fact, as we speak, Ghana Fiscal Service is in the process of rebasing the economy. For which reason, the 61.8% debt to GDP ratio we are seeing today, it will go down to about 40. At that time, we will not allow MPP to come and tell us that we left it at 40. No, never. And that's why I said that Legon at a point, the 80 was A, 70 was B. And so when Legon changes the grading system, you don't go there to tell the university that I'm 79. At the time, the grading system, you needed to get 80 to score A. And so now that you have moved it to 70, I'm changing my grade. You don't do that. Because and he was talking about credibility. You should go and read the extended credit facility arrangement with IMF, April 2015. And the key anchor was that we have lost credibility because the economy was B+ with negative outlook. That's how Kufuor left it. And we had, Standard & Poor's had downgraded us to B- with negative outlook. We were just a step away from the junk status. And that is why we needed international credibility. To get that was the key reason why we went for an IMF. So it was not only the last IMF that we did to restore confidence and credibility. That would be the problem. And so if you pick and choose, you were rather picking and choosing. And unfortunately,
Dr. Donfe, so you know that the state of the economy, the state of the economy, and we all understand the economics as stated in the books, but I always say that it's not so much about what we say, it's a lot more about how people feel. The state of the economy is better explained by the livelihood of people. And that is the reality that people are faced with on a daily basis, beyond the statistics. And do you live the hardships on a daily basis?
Yeah, I live it. Alfred, I sent you a document of, my engagement with, Adom FM on this issue. Alfred, I'm a development economist. By what I do, I work on the poverty. Right as I'm speaking, I'm in Volta region. Because of poverty, I'm doing research on poverty. So that is my main, research and interest. I talk about poverty all the time. Alfred, right. Once we are using the macroeconomic indicators, as a public sector economist, myself, I would want to use the macroeconomy for the conversation to go on. Otherwise, if you come to this level of the individual, if that is the discussion, fine. The incidence of poverty is now 23.4. It's not good. What that tells you is that if you call every 4 Ghanaians, 1 is poor. And Ghana, if you use 2013 concern prices, poverty land is 3 cedis per person a day. At that time, it was equivalent to $1. And so today, $1 is about 16 cedis. If you want to use current prices, then you are suggesting that 1 out of every 4 Ghanaians don't spend up to 16 cedis. And that is serious. Poverty is serious. I have been moving around. Sometimes you go to a village and you have to, in fact, yesterday at UPSC, I said that I have taught students over 15 years who are still roaming on the street without jobs. It is serious. Right. So nobody is saying that today the economy is so good, everybody is happy. No. We are comparing what happened then and now. That's what we are doing. The economy has never been better. And I will tell you that we haven't done what is right since 1957. For our 68 years journey, we have failed to do what is right. And so when we are comparing figures, and he was talking about the fiscal deficit, NBC left fiscal deficit of 9%.
Why you round up for me? Okay, sorry. Let's a quick.
You see, again. You see, what I expect, what I expect economists to do, is to tell the truth to those who are managing the economy. You don't come and make excuses for this poor performance with historical data. In fact, the variation is so wide from historical data that it does not justify the analysis Dr. Donfe is making. Why? What is the relevance of 2017's primary balance to the discussion we are having today? When somebody has left a negative 3.9% negative balance, negative primary balance. For 4 consecutive years, or let's say 3 consecutive years, there's a government that was recording double-digit deficits. Double-digit deficits every year since 2020. That was not happening under the NDC. In fact, I can go between 2009 and 2012 and cite the indices for you as the best ever we've had in the Fourth Republic. But it is not relevant to today's discussion. As we speak, the economy is intact. And the only reason why we seem to even have any breathing space is that there was the harshest ever economic policy implemented by any government under the Fourth Republic. And I dare say in Ghana's history, the DDEP had to be undertaken. If that hadn't happened, this economy would fail to exist. Again, if you compare the indicators that we took to the IMF in 2015 to what the MPP took the IMF in 2022, the difference is wide, the gulf is wide. They went to the IMF in an ambulance. When they went to the IMF, the debt ratio was 104%. That is what they took to the IMF. Our currency had moved from 6 cedis to 17 cedis and had a devastating impact on Ghanaian businesses and Ghanaian households. That is what we took to the IMF. They took a deficit of 15% to the IMF. So this attempt to say that, oh, in the past, there have been slight misses. Why? Alfred, nobody put a gun to the head of the MPP to target a primary balance of 0.5% surplus. They did, because they knew that that is the right thing to do in order to keep the economy afloat. If you set your own target, you miss it by the mark by which they've missed it. You cannot come and praise yourself and cite 2017 primary balance as a reason why we should overlook this catastrophic performance. And you see, people have suffered as a result of this sort of mismanagement. And the last thing I expect is an attempt to water down the effect of this sort of mismanagement. The economy is bad. Simplicity. There's no honest economists out there who can look at this economy and say that things are well. Things are not. We've gone through very, very terrible times. Why? Even the human development indicators took a nosedive. Alfred, didn't you see the Ghana Statistical Service report, which said that in 2023, up to a quarter of Ghana's population lived a day without food? 8.3 million Ghanaians. If your economy is working, will you have that situation? Unemployment. Why did unemployment go to 14.7%? The highest in recent memory. Look at the a number of businesses that went down under because of the economic situation. The number of businesses that had to relocate because of the economic situation. Everything indicated that the economy was intact. So there's no redeeming quality about the management that we saw under the MPP of this economy. And they must be told that. In fact, the electoral outcome is the most definite verdict anybody can use to assess the performance. So please, please.
Let me acknowledge the presence of Franklin Kujo. He's also joining us, Executive Director and Founding President of Imani Africa. And Mr. Kujo, appreciate your time. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning to my friends on the show.
And I know you've been following every step of the way. Dr. Donfe's Zoom froze a bit, was a bit disconnected. We got him back, so he would finish his submission. And I'll come to Senor in a bit. But you've followed this conversation, Mr. Kujo. Now, does the budget address the concerns that you have about the state of the economy and all that has been going on between what Dr. George Donfe has said and Felix Kwame Ofosu's response?
Well, you know, naturally, every budget is supposed to deliver, if you like, some goods, right? And for me, where we are right now, the challenges we've been through, the difficulties we've been through, I'll be more interested in seeing a budget that addresses the larger problems of people. I mean, the needs of people rather than probably even the wants. And to the extent that this budget sort of humanized if you like, some of the challenges that we've all experienced, right? I mean, the very things that the manifesto promised, don't forget when the manifesto was done, a lot of people came out to say, there are so many things they wanted to do, but at least it was humanely packaged because it spoke to the core issues that people really wanted. What is the essence of a budget if it is not going to affect positively people's livelihoods, from healthcare to education to hardcore poverty, and indeed the what can I say? Even of course entrepreneurship, to the extent that the women whose we'll come to that, but I'm just trying to say that the mostly excluded and the vulnerable seems to have been maybe partially taken care of in this particular budget. So as I said, right from the manifesto, the things that were promised were the very things that this budget sought to address. And for me, that is delivering development. I mean, we can talk about high-sounding terminologies, budget deficit. Those things don't matter to people who want to eat. I mean, I've been going to my village almost every time, and my friend, my brother, the things we see and the things we experience, I'm sure you all experience the same thing. You have to pay fees for so many other people, and you do this not because you probably have so much, but also because you just want to share it, and you see people go through a lot of pain. And so for me, look, if for nothing at all, the fact that for the first time I'm seeing, not really for the first time, at least after these difficulties that we've had, we are seeing a budget the manifesto that promised so many things, but then concentrated them around the issues of healthcare, education, livelihoods, and what can I say? Things that, as I said, matter to people. These are low-hanging fruits. And so when the budget goes to say that, look, we are allocating X amount, maybe 51 million may not be enough. We understand for the women's development banking. My understanding, if I look at the budget, essentially is that if we are providing relief for taxes like e-levy, I mean, those taxes that were named, substantially you are putting some money back into people's hands, more or less disposable income. So somehow, if those women who probably require maybe 100 cedis to start a little business or 200 cedis to start a little business, they would have seen some appreciable increase in some of the savings, because they don't have to now expend so much whenever they transfer money. You understand what I'm saying? So, so maybe 51 million may not be enough, but if you netted off that intervention as against what has been done through taxes, some modicum of change would have happened. Again, if you look at the what was it? The paying fees. Well, I'm a hardcore. I'm not really a hardcore capitalist, right? But I'm a market-oriented person. I typically believe that government should not necessarily always spoon-feed certain aspects of the economy which can really grow. Education seems to be one of them. But unfortunately, we've seen the challenges this economy has faced. And so when the government says, okay, look, I want to take care of the first year budget, should I call it fees or tuition for students, which comes to close to about 400-something million Ghana cedis, well, who am I to say that they shouldn't get it? I mean, when they do that, in fact, when they did that, I have to tell you, I had plans to pay fees for a few guys. Once I heard it, they couldn't come back. Now they say, okay, Charlie, give me chop money. I'm like, okay, fine, that one we can manage. So cyclically, you look at it and say, okay, well, maybe they did this stuff, right? People now can breathe some fresh air. You may not agree, and I certainly do not agree, that they should be giving teachers, what's it called? Teachers money.
Teacher training allowance and nursing training allowance.
I totally disagree. I think they should convert that. I totally disagree. I think those should be converted to loans so that they pay back. Everybody else is paying back. I mean, when we were in school in 1998, when I got to the university, I had to wait for a student loan, right? And I paid through my nose after working. So I think we need to instill that culture. But I can understand, but there's a bit of politics that also have to play, which again, maybe the point I'll make, I'll make this point the last. about the dexterity with which this budget was handled by. So, after being a politician and also having studied the economic books and follow closely this economy, makes you really leaves a little wonder how he managed to cleverly, marry, if you like, macroeconomic issues with politics.
Right.
And politics, I mean, essentially, what I'm trying to say here is that, but to the extent that he thinks that, look, some people need to be given freebies, and then balance it against the entirety of the interventions he's made in order to boost enterprise and growth. It looks to me, seems to be a balanced. It's not really a sleight of hand, but clearly speaking, it's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay.
Look, there are many things to be said out of the budget. There are other loopholes that we could actually be looking. But yeah, you don't want me to talk, so.
No, not at all. In fact, I was just coming to why you think that the nurses and teacher training allowance is not for you, should have been converted into loans, and you had expected that the NDC would do that instead of maintaining these allowances to the teachers and nurses. Why?
Alfred, you are too litigious. I don't know whether you just want the news stories, but I just said it that I don't think it's a good use of our money, especially because this is tertiary sector, right? And if the other tertiary students are taking loans, why not? But anyway, as I say again, maybe they decided that because they are doing first year tuition for tertiary students, then obviously they have to do it for the others as well. So maybe that's the other.
Well, there are others around the table who agree and disagree with you. That's why I wanted to have you clarify that point that you made, even before I come to the table. So that's why I asked you again. I hope you understand that now.
I do understand. You are such an interesting interrogator. Do you have any other questions for me about the budget? Because I want to say just one or two last things.
You can go ahead and say that, just one last one.
Okay, so look, yes, there are other issues. For me, I've been wondering all along how I was actually going to fill that gap that these taxes that they promised to have been taken off. And it appears to me that the miracle must have come when he actually got appointed. Because I'm not saying they wouldn't have known how they were going to do it. I'm sure they probably had ideas, but because if you look at it carefully, all the taxes that they said they want to remove against all the $10 billion infrastructure fund and the 24-hour economy, which would also see some expenditure, by the way, which we are yet to hear because I've not seen any modeling yet, but I'm hoping they will do so. We are waiting for this, right?
Right.
So, it made me feel strongly that there may be challenges along the line. But immediately I heard about the tax refund, and I said, wow. I mean, I only tweeted, and I said, I didn't see that coming. Then a brother of mine, not blood related, but I won't mention his name, he's in the customs, he's a deputy commissioner, reached out to me and said, hey, Frankie, that was a master stroke the guy did. You know why? I said, why? So that's the fund, it's a slush fund. Even before I told say that, I got to do. There's a slush fund where all the scams, all those contracts that have been that were birthed at midnight on our bland sites were paid from. So the likes of SML, Turner, GPG, in this scam, you could find its birth. It's an umbilical cord tied to that fund. And then I said, okay, well, look, I'm going to use this fund. The other things I want to say, but funnily enough, some people say, oh no, that's where Charlie get the deal. But the guy said, no, I'm not going to do that. So they went ahead and used that. So that was a master stroke. I think the question now would be, okay, going forward, have we done the permutation to say that in the next year, is that where it's likely to look again for those reliefs? I suspect that we'll see how this economy turns out at the time of the mid-year review, and then we'll see whether we would still rely on that fund, or maybe there'll be substantial gains made in the economy that would have been helpful. One last one, please. So some of my friends were worried that the over-reliance on the, should I call it the T bills, right?
Yes.
Was affecting, I don't know what the point really was. But I suspect that my friends on the other side were essentially worried that the TB rates were going down, and then so what was I going to do? And then it was at variance with what the central bank have now done. I thought, well, if I'm borrowing less on the economy, because I don't want to extend my debt, and so I think they should also relax a little bit and then see how this thing turns out. Thank you.
I appreciate you for this, Mr. Kujo. Now, I know he's going to leave us briefly, but still come back, join us for the IGP conversation. Mr. Franklin Kujo, founding president of Imani Africa, thank you for the point that you make. Senor, now, you hear the argument about what was left behind and what we are faced with right now. I think the concentration is a lot more about how the people who are watching us now feel. Dr. Donfe wants to also contextualize his argument in what was left previously as against the performance of what we are faced with now. That's essentially what he is saying.
Look, let's just put this all in proper context. At every point in time, the state of a country, not just the economy, the GDP, all the key macroeconomic indicators, is a function of a time and also an aggregation of time. So our GDP, as it is today, is an evolution from our independence to date. But that can't be at the heart of the conversation. It's a very intellectual submission, so I respect the fact that he's a professor. We booted the NDC out with joy in 2016. Not because we hated them, but because we believed they had failed in the governance, and the economy was at the heart of our problem. We booted them out and came in expecting salvation from somebody who was supposed to have dared to serve and was committed, was going to turn things around. So that was the task the NPP had, turn things around. And we actually got worse. Let's just face the matter. So coming to talk about 2017 is inconsequential for me. If it's 2017 to where you have brought us, that's fine. 2016, I don't want to hear, because we didn't like it. If we liked it, I'm sure the NDC would have still been in power by now. We didn't like it, and we were very categorical as a people that what was going on and where the economy was going was not something we liked. Even if you look at these primary balance issues. So, I mean, just to contextualize that thing, the conversation must be about the government that the current NDC inherited, I mean, things from. What have they achieved? Where have they brought us? Honestly, the economy is in tatters. We still don't have fiscal space for proper investment in infrastructure to transform our economy. Look at the budget. The increase in capital expenditure is 10%, and it's immaterial. It's actually just about 3 billion, which is equivalent to, almost equivalent to the COVID levy. We don't have proper fiscal space for the infrastructure transformation we need. They are talking about a $10 billion big push. Where is the push? You are pushing where? So they have to now be very creative. There's no fiscal space. We haven't done well. So let's accept it and let's move on and hope that with this budget, and more importantly, the policy resetting and reposition of the NDC, we have hope. This budget is a sign of hope, more on the fiscal consolidation side. We've used too many terminologies, and I think that we disconnect in this kind of conversation with our viewers. What is a primary balance? We are looking at the revenue versus the expenditure without factoring in interest expenses or debt servicing. How much is government looking at generating? How much does it want to spend? Before we come to what we call the overall balance, we now look at about the expenditure, including interest payments. All right, that is what this conversation is about. The reason why it becomes an important conversation is because when you're in a debt crisis and people need to come into your economy, or people are funding you, like the IMF is doing today, they want to make sure that you are stopping the bleed. You get in a debt crisis because you keep piling up debt from your own irresponsible or reckless behavior, or sometimes from a certain remote circumstance. In Ghana's situation, it's bad policy making and bad policy decisions that got us where we are. It's not Russia, it's not Ukraine, it's not COVID. None of that. Because we're already heading this way before those things struck. They may just have facilitated it and actually facilitated more recklessness. We should learn from it. But if you want to learn from something, you must first admit that you made a mistake. All right? So let's get that baseline clear. How do you recover your debt, pay your debt? It means you must start making a positive income. Mm-hmm. You can't pay your debt by creating more debt. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. If you have a debt crisis, so if you earn 10,000 cedis in a month or 1,000 cedis in a month, all right, and then you owe somebody, let's say 8,000 cedis, and you have to start paying, your expenditure must start becoming slightly positive. Mm-hmm. As in, when you take 10,000 and you spend, you should spend less than 10,000 so that you can get something more to pay the people you owe. That is the fundamental. It's common sense. Indeed. That's what primary balance is saying. Okay. So let's look at what we had. NDC in 2016 had a negative 1.5% on the primary balance, not the 9%. Mm-hmm. The first time we saw 9% in quite a while was in 2020 when we had negative 9.2% on the primary balance. IMF is telling you that we are here, so you now have to behave yourself. So you told them that you start making 0.5 surplus, so that you can start showing signs that you are changing your ways. But we ended up with a negative 3.9%. It didn't help. And ended up with an overall balance of negative 7.9. 7.9 or 5. 7.9 against commitment. So things are not well. Government must start changing its way. On that side, when you look at the budget, you see that now this budget is now going back to the IMF benchmark, which needed us in 2020, in 2020 to have 1.5. For this time, I think with the indicative one, it was still 1.55 surplus. We're supposed to have on the primary balance side, 1.5 as a percentage of GDP. More interesting too is the fact that the NDC is now looking at expanding the GDP. So we are looking at in real terms, in nominal terms, you are looking at something more meaningful than even the IMF wanted us to estimate. That is a good sign. But for you to achieve that, it needs a lot of discipline. On your expenditure side, it also needs a lot of creativity on your revenue side. Are we seeing that in this budget? These things are critical conversations to have. Now, you see that the E-levy is out. COVID levy is out. What have we replaced with the COVID levy with? What we've replaced the COVID levy would just be the 2% you are really looking at. All right? That may get you another 2 or 3 billion. Refund. And the tax refund, which the slash fund matter my brother just spoke about. You know, so those are creative things. But at the heart of it is government expecting corporates to increase productivity. Look at the numbers. By over 10 billion in corporate taxes. Then you look at VAT, also looking at deepening revenue generation from that point. It means that there has to be intensity in broadening the base and getting more people into the tax net and making sure that people are really accountable on these things. So I would have hoped to see stronger policy commitments that seem to achieve that. But the numbers are here. It doesn't want to come embedding you by creating the nuisance of e-levy and all that. But I still think that the e-levy in particular shouldn't have been cut out the way it was cut out to zero. But it is an honorable thing to do because the NDC made a promise and they have lived by their promises. I don't believe in the removal of betting tax. E-levy, the way it is, was a nuisance. I agree. But we could have tweaked it. 10 e-levy actually to be now the VAT on the service tax. It will be very small, a small bill on people. Yeah. And if somebody does not file their taxes, because looking at this, it comes with a certain culture of tax responsibility on the part of the citizenry. I would have maybe kept e-levy only for people who don't file their taxes. So if you file your taxes, I know you are fine. If you don't file your taxes, we'll take it as a withholding tax till the day you come back and then retire it or send it into a savings fund, creating another thing for you. But the way it was, I agree, was a nuisance. But the NDC made a promise, they have delivered it, and I think that it is good for everybody. The COVID levy, I also think that we should have relooked it. It was an important levy, but structured not the way it was, where it sinks into a big hole which already had a lot of recklessness and irresponsibility. But if we focus it on an health infrastructure or investment fund, at least we can start clearing some of our health infrastructure deficits with that 3 billion budget. Because when I look at the capex provision for health, it's what about, it's under $1 billion. It's under $1 billion. But for under the 111 alone, look at the budget that we actually need to clear it. I think the president said what, 1.5
billion. There's sometimes say 1.3 billion. It's been changing. So
it's been changing over $1 billion. You understand? And then where's the space? There is no space. The finance minister has a very difficult job. And me, I want to appeal to both the opposition and to all of us as Ghanaians. We have to face our reality. I don't think any MPP man in his own honesty sitting down wants to be hungry when NDC is there. But so when we are talking, we should be proposing and debating ideas, counter proposals on how to turn things around, because the mess that we are in, they are significantly, or they are the heart, they are the ones responsible for it. You know, so let's have the conversation. And Ghanaians, we like everything and we don't want to give anything to our country. That behavior we must, yes, that behavior we must stop.
I don't understand.
Ghanaians want government to do everything for them, and when it's time for us to pay our taxes, we are all finding ways to go around the system. Everybody is calling somebody to help him clear a car somewhere. Everybody, fellas, people call you now, you're in government. All these things must stop. All these things must stop. Where we are as a country is not a great place. For us to move forward, it needs everybody to put the shoulder on the wheel. For us to be honest servants of our country. We can't ask politicians to stop graft amidst this difficulty, and we ourselves want to perpetuate our own minimal kind of graft. When you go and buy something, do you want VAT invoice or not VAT invoice? This cannot change the country. And we, the same people, will come back and be complaining. This thing must stop. Let's be proper citizens, as the former president said.
The citizens,
and in my case, not spectators, not talkers. We talk, we don't do. We talk. Jesus is coming. Stop.
Well, but you say that in your view, the e-levy shouldn't have been removed.
It should be changed.
Redesigned.
You know, redesigned.
Redesigned.
For tax accountability.
For tax accountability.
So if Felix files his taxes each year, his national ID is there. Anytime he does his transactions with his, nobody will charge him anything, because the state believes he will come back and file his taxes. But to widen the net, those who don't file taxes, and they are the ones who are allowed us the most, and so they must pay.
So this is so you're expected to be like a punitive tax to those who do not file,
and so that it will incentivize good behavior as well. If not, government generates revenue. But overall, my submission on the budget, it is a good budget. It has delivered its promises significantly. The infrastructure part is where we have a gap, all right? And it's also an ambitious budget, which actually needs all of us to rally around our flag and help save our country. Where we are is definitely not a good place. One thing that was missing, we always speak about the public debt in our budget. We never speak about the general government debt in our budget. When you talk about your general government debt, that's when you bring in this, your cocoa board, your ECG, which are critical features in the assessment IMF will use. So me, it's one of my problems with this budget, that the transparency and visibility was not forthcoming. We should see data not just on public debt, which is just looking at central government operations, but on the general debt. All right, and then also, the bit that I saw missing outside of just figures is policy initiatives, and I think they could have picked some things from the net. I mean, that will help them achieve the kind of infrastructure investment they need from their campaign promise of the 10 billion big push. But from this budget, this is actually it's about the best that the finance minister can do. That is a good finance minister can do, considering the resources he has. But we need to become a bit more creative on how we can generate alternate resources to deliver the impact infrastructure transformation, and also the productivity of our expenditure. That's one thing we forget.
I see.
The productivity of our expenditure can actually take us far. One last thing before I go. When you compare what they have here with the indicative 2025 based on the IMF structure, you realize something creative that has happened. And I think it's from the negotiations that the government has made. It's not been touted right. It's about how to fund the overall deficit. You know, we had this over 59 billion. They've reduced that overall deficit to 56 billion. Now, funding it would have brought a lot more pressure on our economy, on the domestic debt market. But there's an external financing coming in here, not going into the international capital market, which would have been disastrous for us, but going for concessionary loans from the World Bank and then the IMF. So collectively, I think you have about 10 billion cedis in relief on the domestic market and the pressures that could have brought on us inflation and also on the cost of funds for doing business.
I see. Do you also subscribe to that call that maybe the e-levy should have been remodeled and the betting tax, Senor says he didn't expect that or he didn't want that to be abolished?
And people should pay tax. Betting tax.
That has been done.
Go over. Did you say e-levy should... I can't remember the COVID-19.
No, see, I'm saying that e-levy should have been redesigned. You can find a different name.
And I agree.
So that those who file taxes don't get subject to it. Because there's also another dimension to e-levy, widening the tax net. So you and me, we file our taxes. You as a lawyer, you have to do it. You'll be in trouble. He does it. We all do. So as many people who do that are free of it. So that those who don't file taxes, they will be the ones who should be caught in it. And it would have been easy because it's just your NIA, which serves as your own tax ID.
Okay.
Now, the benefit of that is not income alone, but it's also promoting good tax behavior by the citizen, which is critical for the minister to achieve this. That is what I'm saying. But the e-levy as was a total nuisance.
Yes.
Yeah, so you see, the matter is that, you know, at the base of the e-levy conversation is the fact that it disproportionately targets poor people. Yes. So you see, once again, the moment you say for those who file, they should be out, then we are hitting more at the poor people.
No. You know, the poor people. I understand that, but I'm saying that filing taxes, it doesn't matter whether you are rich or poor.
Yes.
It is a culture that we must nurture.
And we have a long way to go.
But it should have been a way to expedite people's learning, and it could have just been digital, voluntary.
Yes.
Self-assessment.
Good. So because we still have a huge problem with the filing system, okay, not like America, is it April 15 for 30?
Everybody does it, rich and poor.
But Ghana, we are still a long way from that culture. So it's safe that we let e-levy go now because of that problem. So maybe GRA should make you ambassador for the filing system. I'm sure you do a good job at it. I know some years ago the campaign was done even before this. Yeah, certain people went to file. I think in Doom. Yeah, when you read the Revenue Administration Act, there's a deadline. Is it April 30th or so?
It's April 30th for everybody.
Yeah, so Indum went to file his to signal that people should do, then it fizzled out. So I agree with you, long term, that is what should be done. But currently, right now, because we will disproportionately target poor people. I know we all sit here and we are interested in inclusion. We don't want economic development that excludes poor people. Kwatiofosu just mentioned the 8-point-something million who are below the poverty line. Is that also, Minister?
Yes.
Excellent. So they are offering our concern. So because this e-levy was causing them too much headache, I think for now, I agree with the abolition. As and when we increase education on everybody filing by April 30th, etc., then we can go with what you're saying. So maybe you can be a self-appointed ambassador, right?
I beg you.
No, that's how these things go. Like the way I'm at this table because I took initiatives, going to court, maybe number 1, number 2. Yeah, so take the initiative, write them a proposal that you are self-appointed. This is what you intend to do. Then let them, buy in, and then you roll out. Hey, you have a lot of energy. People know you. DEP, you did a good job. Yeah, so you can rally people because that thing, we all see it. We all know where the problems are, but like nobody wants to take that bold step. So that's my point on the e-levy one.
And then you said COVID-19.
You see, the COVID-19 matter. Sarah, you know, since Dr. Asako mentioned it, I've been thinking, you see, and so Senyo also says that, yes, he subscribes to renaming it and letting it go on. Yes, to the extent that it brings money, I have a soft spot for it. But you see, the danger is that, you see, JM went through an election, he promised.
Yeah, I understand. That's honorable on their part. Very honorable.
And the reason, and don't forget that, you see, one thing we often leave out, today I don't think we've mentioned it too much directly.
Right.
The main problem we have with our tax generation systems are, to be honest, the ordinary man knows that the politician is getting too much from the public purse. I mean, in terms of the cars, the other day you listed V8, pickup, saloon, traveling allowances, the impress. The politicians get way too much. So the ordinary man is not interested. So this thing that COVID-19, people are angry because, look, you all go to the same classroom, you graduate the same day. Let the politician enter office, even as a DCE. In 2-3 years, he will earn more than you will ever earn in your entire working life. So let's understand the tax.
The official, unofficial earnings.
Everything, because our systems are weak. We've been saying it. Like we keep saying that there are gifts. A lot of the things we call gifts, they are actually bribes. But because we don't have evidence, you call it gift now, so that the conversation can go on. So you see, anytime you mention this tax matter and you don't mention accountability, then you haven't said anything.
I agree.
So until President Mama promised that the Article 71, the ex gratia, etc., will be abolished, right? So if you want people to pay that all these taxes, start from there. The election promise was that Article 71 office holder, I'm going to abolish the, especially for the political class. Let's clarify. He said for his appointees. Since he came into office, I haven't heard a repetition of the promise or the steps being taken. So that is where, Mr. Ofosu, do you have any visibility on it?
That position still stands. Indeed, when he made the Constitution Review Commission, he reiterated it.
Very good.
But so he has power only over his appointees.
Yes, that's where we were.
Arms of government.
Yes,
that must be clarified.
Yes, that's why I clarified. I'm happy you've repeated it. So you should come. The moment you want to talk about taxes in Ghana, you have to first, to make the discussion sink, you have to start about how you plug loopholes, how your classmate who enters politics will not earn in 2 years what you take 20 or 30 years to earn. Until you've said that, you've not said anything.
You are right.
Until you've said that, you've not said anything.
You are 100%.
So let's start with the accountability. This is blocking all the corruption issues. Then the citizens will be interested. Otherwise, So that is my take on the COVID levy. So for now, because we haven't strengthened the accountability issues, we haven't done the close all the loopholes, and the politicians are still feeding very fat on the public purse, let the COVID levy go. When you strengthen those systems, we can always reinstate. Yes, because it's on the basis. He knows how the citizens feel. So citizens are feeling like, no, politicians make way too much. They make way too much. Don't overtax us. So he agreed that he will let it go. He should let it go. When he strengthens the anti-corruption system, the waste, the leakages, all that, and their excessive packages, then they will pay so that that tax can be reinstated. Right. Because poverty is a big problem. It's a huge problem. So we shouldn't take these matters lightly.
It is indeed. And this matter, and this is where we get into the next and final part of the budget conversation this morning. And I keep talking about the full document because some of you are saying that what we are putting, you didn't hear the finance minister talk about. The full budget is on the finance ministry's website. Now, Alexander Afenyo-Marking, the minority leader, talked about two things. The allocation to the presidency, some 2 billion cedis he mentioned. And if you check the details of the budget as published on the finance ministry's website, there's some detail in there. And then also the net freeze on public sector employment. I want to take a look at this, and then we'll go into the budget as published on the finance ministry's website. This is Alexander Afenyo-Marking. Take a look.
This is a house of records. Mr. Speaker, they came into office promising jobs. Yet, they are not giving jobs. Mr. Speaker, there is a net freeze on employment. 3, Mr. Speaker, their own so-called 24-hour economy policy did not find space in the budget. These are matters that must engage the attention.
Please, let me listen, I'll come back to you.
Let me conclude so that he comes in.
Okay.
And true to it, you have come under item F, Income Tax Amendment Bill.
Alexander Apanyomaki, the minority leader there, talks about the freeze on employment, net freeze on employment. Well, you didn't hear the finance minister talk about that, and this $2 billion allocated to the presidency. Alfred Apia is a data scientist. Alfred is joining us on Zoom right now with the details of the budget as pertaining the presidency. Alfred, good morning.
Great.
Good to have you. Alfred, now, I want us to take a look at the page on the allocations to the MDA expenditure allocation for the 2025 budget. In the budget, just for the benefit of viewers, let's put that on the screen. And where exactly does this 2 billion cedis to the presidency that Alexander Apanyomaki mentioned in Parliament? Let's take a look at it. This is it. This is the page. Now, let's talk through it. What exactly has been allocation?
So, I hope you can hear me, Alfred.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, so I think this issue of the Office of Government Machinery always becomes a point of the politicians politicize it a lot, right? This reminds me of what happened in 2021 as well, between 2020 and 2021, when there was a whole argument about OGM budgets significantly increasing from 2020 levels, right? So I think it's the same thing that's happening here. But of course, there are these different agencies under the Office of Government Machinery. And with, like, I think the Honorable Felix had explained the issue with the National Security and the former Information Ministry getting moved to the presidency or the Office of the Government Machinery. Now, there's also usually a detailed MDA estimates that get published after the budget gets approved and all of that. And usually, even with that, it would break it down by, the Chief of Staff office, the Vice President office, all those different breakdowns. So you actually can get very granular in that breakdown. I think, to me, one of the issues with it has to do with the presentation. So when you look at on my screen, I showed the 2024 breakdown, right? So there's all these different things that were listed there, and then when you look at the 2025 breakdown, it's very little, right? So you see the national security, all right, you see the government communication. So I think that might have been a presentation issue, and then people not waiting to see the MDA estimate also create that confusion. But I think it's something that the politicians politicize a lot. But now if we take a look at what the Honorable Felix said, though, and we try to do the analysis, right? So we know that there was a 10% increase in compensation. So if we take the 2024 OGM, assuming that nothing has moved, right? We take that, all the total was at around 326. So we adjusted by 10%, right? We take the former Ministry of Information's budget. Again, we are looking at just compensation because that's where the issue has been. Mm-hmm. You take the Ministry of Information compensation. Then you take the national security's compensation. You adjust all of those by the 10%, assuming that the 10% is across board, right? So if you do that, you still are left with a gap of about 780 million. That is not explained, right? So I think that's one of the things that the government probably will need to clarify, because if we make the argument that we move national security, we move information ministry and all the agencies under that, but we look at the headline compensation and then we adjust it. We get to, we're still missing, like I said, we still have a gap of about 780 million.
780 million.
CDs, yes, that is not explained. I see. Yes. And so that's also one of the issues, right?
So that 780 million cedis bar is what is next to the 2.71 billion. That's the
current compensation. Yes,
current
this is the current compensation. Yes. So basically, this is just showing the
salaries and transfers.
Yes,
essentially.
This is all salaries and pension
for
and
the
stuff.
Office of Government Machinery.
Office of Government Machinery. Yeah.
Okay. So now I think that this question that you ask, we need to get answers. Phyllis Kwachofosu is the best man to give us the answers to the questions. Alfred, great stuff there. Great stuff, Alfred, and I thank you as well. So please stay with me and let's put that on the screen. So this is what is in the budget. 2.71 billion cedis for the Office of Government Machinery. Now, the breakdown we've seen, but what's the computation for this?
Alfred, I think that
gap that
you see, this matter was raised by the MPP with a mischievous twist to create the impression that the moment President Mahama came into power, he went to collect any and every NDC person available and put him at the presidency and has decided to pay him. So suddenly the budget has moved from 326 million Ghana cedis to 2.711 billion Ghana cedis. That is not the case. You see, when we say Office of the President, on its own, it's made up of 6 divisions or units.
Okay.
So there's what we call the General Administration. There's the Office of the Chief of Staff. There's the Vice President Secretariat, Cabinet Secretariat, Press Secretariat, and then Policy Coordination and Delivery Units. So these are the 6 entities that make up the Office of the President. But in our governance system, there are entities that don't fall under any ministry, but they have to be catered for budgetary purposes, because all budgets must go through a mother agency for purposes of classification. So before we came to power, in addition to these 6 units, this is actually what we call the Office of the President, where the President functions. So when you come to Flagstaff House, this is it, these 6 units. But there are, in addition to these 6 other agencies, under the MPP, there were 20 additional agencies. And with your indulgence, I have to go through it just for transparency's sake.
Okay.
There's a Public Sector Reform Secretariat, Council of State, State Protocol, Scholarship Secretariat, Office of the Administrator General, Public Enterprise Secretariat, Zongo and Inner City Development Secretariat, Ghana AIDS Commission. At the time, National Identification Authority was under them. National Population Council, Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Millennium Development Authority, Internal Audit Agency, MASLOC, SIGA, that is State Interest and Governance Authority, National Center for Coordination of Early Warning and Response Mechanism, Coastal Development Authority, Middle Belt Development Authority, Northern Development Authority, and Zongo Development Fund, making 26 agencies.
All under the Office of Government Machinery.
Now, all the people who work in these places, apart from the 336 political appointees under President Akufo-Addo, are civil servants. If you put the number together under the MPP, there were roughly 1,200 civil servants. If you add all the agencies together.
Yes, that's under that Office of Government Machinery.
Exactly. So that together we call them Office of Government Machinery. Indeed, when you look at the budget, under Office of Government Machinery, they break it down into OGM headquarters and agencies. Headquarters refers to Jubilee House.
I see.
And agencies, because of the lack of space, they are not able to list all of them. But the agencies are what I have listed for you. And then here they add Council of State, National Security. But I will explain that. If you look at the 2024 budget, this was captured. However, when President Mahama became president, by virtue of the EI, he abolished 7 ministries. Some of the ministries no longer exist. Now, I need to explain that when you take a ministry, there is the ministry itself, which is where the political leadership and directors work. In addition to that, there are agencies where other civil servants work. So, for instance, if you take the Information Ministry, where I used to be before, so there was a minister. At a point, they had 2 deputy ministers.
Right.
Just before we came to power, in addition to the minister and the deputy, there were 76 directors. So once the ministry was abolished, all the 76 plus the minister and deputy left. But the agencies that the superintendent remained, and all the civil servants there remained.
Right.
However, when you abolish the ministry, you make savings because you no longer have to cater for the political class managing the place. So when you do that, for example, if you had 126 ministers and now you have 60, it means that you've taken away 66 of such entities. So the whole ministry doesn't exist anymore. However, the agencies remain. And they are civil servants. You can't touch them. The most you can do is to reassign and transfer. You understand me? But as for the political class, they no longer exist. And you make real savings. The cost of a Land Cruiser now, if you want top of the range, $140,000. But I'm being, this is government issue. Government issue, so it will not go beyond a certain point. Around 2 million.
I beg you, the previous government, they were buying Lexus.
Well, I'm even being modest.
On the market,
for purposes of,
160,000.
absolutely. So you are talking in excess of 2 million Ghana cedis. If you are not buying 66 of those, and as a minister, you are giving what do you call it? A sedan. What we call here a saloon car, which is anything between $50,000 to $60,000. In addition to that, you have a bungalow, you have a driver, you have domestic staff. They buy you fuel, they buy your DSTV for you, electricity bill, water bill. They even pay you. They pay your telephone bills. Very expensive. If I tell you the bills of ministers' telephone conversations, you'll be amazed.
Please do.
All those things are removed. So hundreds of millions of Ghana cedis are saved by just getting rid of the ministry. Now, once you get rid of the ministry, the agencies remain. When you are doing a budget, agencies are not budgeted for individual. They must go through a mother ministry because they must defend their budget. For instance, as I sit here, I must go and defend the agencies left under the Information Ministry's budget when the appropriation starts. I must go and justify why they must be given A, B, or
ISD
C.
and everybody.
So because of that, they are classified under a mother agency. Because these scrapped ministries don't exist, their agencies have had to be taken somewhere. So when you take culture and chieftaincy, they've been placed under local government. So they are taken care of. So now the local government minister will do that on their behalf.
Right.
Understand me? But when you come to information has 6 agencies. 3 of them, however, are state-owned enterprises. So they fall under SIGA. So they don't really need budgetary protection. No, not GBC. Ghana Publishing Company, Graphic Communication Group, New Times Corporation. There are 3 of them, however, that don't fall into that category. GBC is a public broadcast station. So they are not strictly speaking a SIGA agency. So there's GBC, there's Ghana News Agency, and then there's ISD, Information Service Department. Then there's National Security, which had a Ministry of National Security, which doesn't exist anymore. For reporting purposes, the Interior Minister has been designated, but their budget has not gone to Interior. So when you look at the budget, you won't see them. Last year's budget had them. But when you look at this year's budget, they are not at Interior. So they've come under Office of Government Machinery. Now they have come with 4 agencies. The National Security Secretariat itself. There is what we call research department. They are not an agency that like to be talked about, but you know what they are. Then there is the National Intelligence Bureau, which we used to call BNI. And then there's Signals Bureau, which is also another secretive agency who doesn't like being talked about very much. All of them have had to come under Office of Government Machinery.
I see.
I told you that the civil servants who existed under the MPP in those 20 agencies were 1,200. Alfred, now the civil servants in ISD alone are more than all the civil servants in the 20 agencies that we came to meet under Office of Government Machinery. They are 1,309. ISD alone, because I superintend them. The civil servants at GBC are 1,115. Even then, their Director General consistently laments that they still have manpower shortfall. They need about 700 more.
In addition to that,
but TV3, we thought they are doing. I mean, how many people?
But that's a conversation we can have. GBC alone has 1,115 civil servants, employees who are not political appointees. And then there's DNA, which is the smallest, which has 133. These 3 organizations alone have added 2,500 civil servants to the civil servants at the under Office of Government Machinery. Now let's come to the security agencies. And I know the National Security Coordinator will not be amused by me making this issue, but it's necessary for transparency.
Maybe you don't have to mention.
Yeah, I won't go into detail. I can only tell you that the 4 agencies that have come from the National Security outfit, Research Department, Signals Bureau, NIB, and National Security Secretariat itself, if you add them to the ones that have come from the 3 information ministry agencies, they've added 9,949 civil servants to the Office of Government Machinery.
9,949.
Exactly. And these people are going to be paid from controller. The money won't come to the presidency to be handed over to anybody. You understand me? So if you look at the budget, you can do the math. So you see averagely how much everybody is taking. It is within the range that all civil servants get, depending on their classifications. So Alfred, President Mahama has not been given 2.7 billion Ghana cedis to use to run the office of the president. He is only having to take charge of civil servants and the agencies that have been collapsed. So nothing untoward has happened. However, if you want to see whether anything untoward is happening, you look at discretionary spending, where that is where you have the right to decide to use for A or B. Indeed, it was from that President Akufo-Addo was hiring the presidential jets that we all lamented for.
Bathing in the sky.
Absolutely. So that money came from the goods and
why is he jealous?
Now in 2024,
gentlemen, hold on.
In 2024, which is the last reference year we can use, the goods and services budget of the Office of Government Machinery, which had a total of about 1,200 civil servants plus 336 political appointees. The goods and services budget, with the discretionary expenditure, was 924,143,874 goods and services budget. If you look at the capex budget, capital expenditure, it was 612,440,000.
Wow.
That is, if you put these together, you are talking in excess of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. That's discretionary expenditure. You understand me?
Yes.
However, if you look into this budget, despite the numbers moving from 1,200 to 11,657 civil servants, I must stress, the goods and services budget has reduced to 847,964,846
from the over 1.5
from the 920
yes.
900 and
almost 925 million.
Exactly. Now the capex budget, despite the quadrupling of the numbers of civil servants, I must stress, not political appointees, has reduced from 612,440,588 under the MPP to 269,755,853. If you put the two together, a total of 419 million Ghana cedis in savings or cuts has been made to discretionary budget. The discretionary budget.
The one that
you understand? So that is actually the money that has been given to President Mahama to run the office of the president.
I see.
Or office of government machinery.
You bath in the sky.
That has reduced by over 400 million Ghana cedis.
Who bath before
but
go
the
to
salaries of civil servants, which you can't catch. Okay. They are only passing through 2.7. Exactly. Billion. They are only passing through so that when the finance minister is allocating the money, he knows where to send it to. But even that is money that controller will pay from source. I must also stress that there's been a certain mischief that my office, government communication, has been given 78 million Ghana cedis for propaganda. Alfred, that is not true. Indeed, the three agencies under me will bitterly lament this amount because the money is for them. The goods and services budget of the three agencies that have a total of
capex is 70.
I'm coming. The goods and services for the three agencies that have 2,500 employees and beyond is 8.8 million goods and services.
It's ridiculous.
And then capex is 70 million. That is not sufficient for GBC alone to be able to finance their operations in the year. But the 78 million is for them. I am Minister of State Government Communications. So they report to Parliament through me. The money is not for my office. I invite you to my office any day, Alfred. You will see it's a one-room office. Then adjoining that is a small reception area where I have 2 administrative staff who sit there. Good. We don't need 8.8 million in goods and services. Good. We don't need 70 million. Because actually we don't need any capital expenditure. Beyond the furniture, etc.
Your mouth alone can solve the problem.
I don't need it. So it is
for ISD.
It is for ISD,
GBC.
GNA, and they will lament bitterly that it is woefully
inadequate. I'm really worried. I'm honestly worried.
Do you know how much GBC needs to establish a presence in the 6 new regions that don't have GBC presence? They need 6 million Ghana cedis. In each of those 6, so they need 36 million to be able to establish a presence in Northeast, Western North, and Savannah, and what have you. No, yeah. So you see that already they alone can take half of this capex. And then ISD, which also needs all the money they can get because they need to be able to invest in equipment to do their work. So anybody who tells you that this money has been allocated to me is false. Indeed, if you want to know, go back to 2024.
I see.
The budget of the Information Ministry in 2024 was 262 million.
That's what I'm saying, that put into bracket Information Ministry.
Information Ministry, yes.
So that it
makes life easy for everybody. The budget for the Information Ministry under the MPP in 2024 was 267 million Ghana cedis. And yet this year, the goods and services and CapEx budget for the 3 agencies under them is 78 million. The other issue too is that they say that we have allocated 15 million Ghana cedis for research at the presidency because there's a line item here, research department. And Senor, you know that the research department is not the research unit at the office of the president.
Yes.
In fact, they are a highly secretive intelligence agency that works under the national security outfit. So they have been given goods and services and CapEx.
But even honestly,
and even it is so small that
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly, it is so small that
it's
they would
not adequate.
So let me put it on record.
Okay. It doesn't.
50 million. Is it the MPP had a professor from Lagos?
It's too small.
No, in fact, it was set up by the late Newman.
Yeah.
He was a research director. So that was a unit at the presidency that did research for the office of the president. And then they brought in a professor from Lagos to fill that place. When he said Newman passed away. Yes. As I speak to you, that unit doesn't exist anymore. But research department is an intelligence.
Oh no,
research department is an intelligence agency.
Okay,
they are external intelligence agency. Just that.
Exactly. If you put it in research, people will question.
No, but that's what
that the description.
In fact, people popularly they are called Audi. That's what they are called. You understand me? So they are the ones who have been allocated 70 million.
They are in the securities and intelligence agencies.
Absolutely. Right. So they are a statutory organization that you cannot just scrap without going through some processes. So please, the presidency has not been given 50 million for research. That is not true. It is for the research.
But for me, I think the president needs more than that for actual research.
But we understand that times are hard. And indeed, let me also clarify that in terms of political appointees, there are 30 people, 27 presidential staffers, and 3 directors for various initiatives. President Mahama has said that eventually we will engage support staff because, for instance, as a minister, I cannot be in my office alone. I need administrative staff. But he has put such a high caveat on it and said that it will not come anywhere near what the NPP had, 336. So please, this 2.7 billion is not for political appointees. It is for civil servants. And President Mahama has not added one more civil servant to what he came to meet.
Right.
Already you are talking about a net freeze. We have even had to send some home.
Apenyo Markin is the one who
no problem. It's a conversation that is out there. Yes. It simply means that employment will be made as and when there is space. That's all. Unlike the situation where every year there was recruitment, whether there was space or that's what it simply means. It doesn't mean that there will be no employment. And it's a long-standing policy that dates back to the Mills era, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's a long-standing policy.
Education and health are exempted.
They are exempted, and then the security agencies because of obvious reasons. Yes. So please, I think that this must be made clear. The MPP has raised this as a red herring because they came under criticism for the number of political appointees at the office of the president. And I think by the fair end of the first quarter, the president is required to publish the list of all staff. They add civil servants to it, but even there is not even all of them who are added. But the political appointees will be named and their designations will be made clear. When the information ministry existed, there were a minister and deputy and 76 people who managed government information. As I sit here, I'm alone. I have my deputy Shamima, and then there's a lady called Amma Pratt, who is the press secretary to the vice president. And then my 2 administrative staff. And then there are 2 other people who help us with creative. So that the video that you saw, there's somebody who works on that. That's all. Instead of 76, there are now 7 people who manage the presidency. And you know, if you know what the presidency is, the kind of schedule that the president has, I have to manage that and manage the entirety of government communication in addition. And I do that.
You are 7
no, we are not associated. We are doing everything in house. And there are 7 people. So by all means, if 76 people plus a political head and deputy were managing information and 7 people do it, you know that the cost will go down. If there were 336 political appointees, and if you know the salaries that those political appointees were drawing, even those within the middle to lower brackets, it will not be. I won't. But but they were not. I can say that they were not small monies. They were certainly higher. They were certainly higher than what the civil servants were getting. And there were 336 of them. Political appointees. Now there are 30. So, Alfred, even if you doubled what they were getting and give it to the NDC appointees now, it comes nowhere near what they were getting. So that cannot be the reason why this has gone up. It is civil servants that have come. But I'm sure in due course, they may go back to existing agencies as a way of, but this is the first budget, so we needed to find ways to apportion them. So that's yes.
I am very impressed. I'm very impressed by the transparency you guys are putting out.
Why I had to bring him because of these questions about
because I had a former information minister who should know what the research department is. Say that there's
this explanation suffices, you know.
Yeah, that's clear.
Like I said, the research department, just into bracket this.
But that's their name, actually.
The research department,
so that without you, if nobody takes the budget, without your presence.
Doc, you see, if you made that error, I can forgive. You are not a government. But we are talking about a former information minister who should know. You understand? We are talking about somebody who used to work at the office of the vice president.
You see, I was talking about the reduction in revenue and expenditure, etc. If you do the ratios, I just quickly did the ratios. Your ratios are bigger than MPP's ratios.
Which one?
Because you have a lower revenue, a lower expenditure, and a lower projected GDP.
Yes.
So all the ratios here, MPP 1.1, NDC 1. In the budget proposed, 1.8, MPP 0.7, MPP 1.5% of GDP, MPP 0.2, NDC 0.3. So you see why we say COVID-19 should not go.
Okay.
So that you can up your game.
COVID-19 as it was had to go. Is that it should have been
there's a
new tax? It should have been health infrastructure. So it goes
live here on Key Point, and we've touched the aspects of the budget and then this government machinery matter. The president, when he was swearing in the deputy ministers, said by end of week, the last 4 deputy ministers will be announced. Are we to expect it before end of tomorrow?
Well, Alfred, that for me, I'm nothing more than a glorified gong beater. So as and when the president makes the nominations, I will make it public for everybody to know. But we have to allow the president the space and time to do what is necessary. In any event, he promised 60 ministers, but as of now, there are 56 people manning the affairs of the country. But he will keep his promise of 60, just as he has kept his promise to scrap.
Right. I was only asking because he made
it is
promise.
necessary. And let me make this point. There are people who say that, oh, because the civil servants remain, nothing is gained.
Oh, no.
No.
I don't agree.
And you see, I have been restrained just so that I don't put some politicians in a certain light. But if you look at the expenditure on the politician, it is estimated. It is estimated that up to 10 million Ghana cedis is spent on a politician in the 4-year period that they are in office.
Per person.
All right.
Per person.
Thank you.
Because even the domestic staff we are giving, I have a driver, but I pay him myself. He's a driver I've been with for about 20 years. But I pay him myself. He's not paid by the state. When I was leaving office, I took him away.
Very good.
And then we've come back. But I pay him myself.
Thank you.
I have never accepted. I have never accepted a policeman.
Okay.
I have never accepted a policeman. In fact, I'm entitled to 2. These days that I'm an MP, I'm also entitled to 1 from Parliament. They put 1 in your house and then 1 you move away with. I have never accepted 1.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have never accepted domestic staff. But ministers are entitled to that. If you look at in fact, when I was in power before, they will give you another number. I have a difficulty using 2 numbers because it's a bit of a hassle for me. They will give you another number and you have free reign to make us. If you look at the bills of that alone, and you multiply that by 66 ministers, when we had 120 compared to the 60 that we have now, you see how much money we spend on a political class. Look, you are given a certain amount of fuel every week. You know how much these high performance four-wheel drives consume. So please, hundreds of millions of savings are made by scrapping 1 ministry alone. But as for civil servants, of course, we can have a conversation. There are many who think that we should downsize. But it's not a conversation that I think we should be taught because of the way that unemployment is an issue. But let us separate that. President Akufo-Addo came under criticism because it appeared that any and everybody who was an MPP activist was put in a office. Some of them didn't have functional necessity. They were not needed. But they were there.
Thank you. And you see, it still comes back to the issue that it shouldn't just be about the values of a particular individual who becomes president. How about we legislate some of these cost-cutting measures that you have put in place?
So I don't believe that.
I'm coming. Beyond President John Mahama, these cost-cutting measures must be abided by. It shouldn't go with him and his administration after 4 years.
Alfred,
because what you're saying, obviously,
I don't believe that
laudable.
we should legislate against every ill or perceived wrong in our society. That is why you don't just plug somebody from the street and make him president. You expect that the president will be able to exercise a certain level of judgment in his own dealings. Well, you don't expect that the president who has a presidential aircraft, for instance, simply because there's a problem with it, will go and rent an aircraft of a certain high specification, knowing full well the impact. He can go commercial, or even if he is minded to rent something. Look, I say this all the time. I was with President Mahama in Frankfurt in the year 2014. In fact, when we went to the presidential aircraft, but I had to go to France because they had to service it. The servicing period was due. So the president had options. He can go commercial, or he can go and rent another aircraft. President Mahama accepted to come back from Frankfurt to Accra. You know that at that time, Lufthansa used to come here. And the aircraft they had only economy seats. He sat in it with his wife. And when the pilot announced that the president of Ghana was on that flight, everybody was amazed. He sat in an aircraft that had only economy seats. Wow. And he didn't flinch. All right. He sat in there. He could also have rented a very expensive aircraft and said that, oh, at least it was for just one trip from Frankfurt to Accra. But he opted. Look, I've been with him on a flight. He is a president. He cannot travel alone for obvious reasons. The security people will throw a fit if they learn that he was traveling. When we got to Charles de Gaulle Airport, there was a mix-up with the thing. So it was only he and his wife who could go on the flight. He could just have said, okay, I'm not going by that flight. Let's rent an aircraft. He went and sat in that aircraft alone. So we had to meet him up. You understand me? So he took that risk as president because he believed that, look, at the time we had some economic difficulties. There were young people who were unemployed. So yes, let me save the few millions of Ghana cedis that we can use to do something else to benefit the people. Rather than really? So naturally, he is not, look, there are many things that because of security I cannot see. But he is not a man accustomed to luxury at all. Okay. Even though he has the power
if these to do as even if he does, I will go and throw him out.
Absolutely. But you see, we as leaders must be sensitive to the plight of the people. Right? And that is why I talk about
I must be honest, I mean,
these measures as laudable and has received the commendation of everybody here on the table. Somehow we must be thinking about how to sustain and even improve on these cost-cutting measures if so laudable. That's where my thinking is.
You see that the cost has been cut. The special expenditure is down by 400 million.
After this quick break.
Even though the numbers have increased
after this quick break, we're getting to another important issue. But I was clothed this morning by Kogra Clothing. You can call them on 026 055 8056. With this outfit I'm wearing and many others you've seen me wear on Saturdays, Kogra Clothing, 026 055 8056. That's 026 055 8056. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. Stay with us.
Sub with DSTV and we'll show up.
Honorable member and honorable chair, several opportunities. And what I said yesterday, if you give me the chance today, I will say so again. He is not managing the police service well. And for me, for the 31 years that I've been in the service, I can tell you he's the worst IGP we've ever had. The tape has been edited. And the chairman of the committee came out to say that, yes, the tape has been edited.
Well,
it seems that you said allegedly.
It seems to me you're in a hurry to be vindicated.
Of course, I'll be vindicated. I know.
We'll see how that goes.
I know what happened.
You know what happened?
Yes.
What happened?
I'm not ready to say it here because it is before a committee.
You were also accused of being the worst IGP this country has ever had. How did you receive the accusation, and what is your reaction?
Yes. Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Honorable Chair, I think probably my brother wanted to say I'm the best and he missed it. Because the records are there for everybody to see. The beauty of mankind is that everybody has an opinion and you can express it in any form of shape, but that has not changed the facts.
That's the immediate past IGP, Dr. George Ekofo Dampare there. And on Thursday, the man who signed the statement announcing his exit and also the announcement of the new IGP, COP Christian Tete Yohuno, is with us, Phyllis Kwachofosu. So tell us, Thursday night, what really happened? Really?
Let me preface this by saying that unfortunately, I have to run to Parliament. There's a post-budget meeting. Even on the weekend, we are still working. So I think we deserve a bit of credit for that. You do. But the point is that, you see, as a public servant, unless it is expressly stated that you have security of tenure, once the Constitution gives the power to the president to hire, he has a right to say that, oh, Mr. Senior will say thank you for your services, but leave for Mr. Matipebo to take over. You needn't have done anything wrong. And indeed, I don't recall that there has ever been an IGP who has been dismissed for specific wrongdoing. If there's any such record, I'm happy to learn about it. Once a new person emerges as president, I think that the general expectation is that he will make changes in the direction of the country. So key institutions of state, like the security agencies, which the police service is a major plank of, should expect some change in direction. So I expect that even the heads of these agencies will hold themselves in readiness for such a day. It is nothing personal. It is not a judgment on the performance or otherwise of the current occupant of that office. It is just a change that the sense that if the entire country has found it necessary to change direction, then institutions too must change in terms of leadership. And this is something that has been done over the years, and it has not generated any qualms. If I don't even remember or ever remember an IGP whose dismissal generated significant controversy, because people have come to expect this. I have heard some of our friends in civil society embark on a spirited campaign to get, IGP Dampare to be retained. But you see, again, that raises a bit of a problem. It's like you are attempting to force the president's hand to make a certain choice, which, in my view, is not even beneficial to the former IGP, because it creates the impression that he has come to, as it were, engage you to do some advocacy on his behalf, even if that is not the case. Because the level to which this was taken gave a certain sense that there was a certain conspiracy, a certain cabal within some spaces.
Because it was taken to court.
Taken to court, and then
Supreme Court for
when there was indication that this change was going to happen, then that was reactivated again, and it created a bit of a difficulty. But the Constitution is very clear in Article 202 that in consultation with the Council of States, the IGP shall be appointed by the President. The Constitution is quite clear. The IGP, as far as we know, doesn't have the same security of tenure as the Electoral Commissioner or Supreme Court judges or the Chief Justice. You understand the point I'm making? So the President is within his rights to decide that I need to, because when you come to the people with a manifesto, a program, all the institutions of state that are within your control are subject to your policies. So if my policy is to ensure that the security sector is handled a certain way, I have the right to decide that Mr. A or B has the profile to enable me achieve that objective. It is just that that kind of objective must be achieved through fair and transparent means, nothing underhand. I also don't believe that you need to politicize the police. The person doesn't need to be an NDC or NPP person. It's completely immaterial in the scheme of things. So I think that some of the narrative must be toned down. It is nothing unusual. It won't be the last time that a new president makes changes in the security services.
Well, there's a reason why these CSOs you talk about went to court, so that, I mean, this
but again,
change...
as we speak, there's no judicial pronouncement on the matter.
Indeed.
And I don't think the Supreme Court itself will take the view that until they pronounce on the matter, governance should be held in abeyance. I don't think that it is fair at all. So you can say that, okay, this is a gray area. I want to test the law on it. But I don't think that until the matter is determined, because that case has been pending for quite some time. It is not fair.
Last year.
It is not fair to the yes. It is not fair to the entire country that governance is kept in abeyance because of an interpretation that you are seeking. You are not even accusing anybody of any specific wrongdoing. You are just seeking interpretation on some provisions of the law. And because of that, everything. I don't think it is proper. It smacks off a certain effort to foist someone on the president and by extension the country. And I don't think that our friends went, even though we respect their right to point out their disagreements about governance processes. Sometimes the way you do it can create a certain effect that you did not intend. And I think in this instance, that effect has come into being, even if they didn't intend it. Maybe they should go about it another way. But Mr. Yohuno is a fine police officer. And his CV shows that he's been at this for over 40 years, both within and outside Ghana. He's been around for quite some time. He has held various positions with the police service. In fact, the last time I encountered him at a personal level was in 2014, when he was Greater Accra Regional Police Commander. Now he's risen to, he became Deputy IGP, and then he's become IGP. So nobody can question his mettle, the capacity and experience and depth and substance that he brings to the current position. So we can only wish Mr. Dampare, Dr. Dampare well, thank him for his services. I'm sure that given the experience he's garnered, he's 54 years old, so he still has quite some active life in terms of work. And therefore, he should be in high demand, in my view, in other places where they require his sort of expertise. So I don't think that it is much of an issue. It's a routine change that has been made within the police administration. Eventually, more changes will be made. Yesterday,
it was bound to happen regardless.
I think that the convention has been that new. Sometimes they give the occupants of those positions sometime.
But it was expedited by circumstances.
Well, for me,
it's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
It was done in January.
You can do it
No, he knows what I'm saying.
You can do it instantly, or you can defend. I recall that when President Mills became president, there was an IGP, Mrs. Robertson. Yeah, he stayed there for some time.
Only losers. He insulted the So January.
Exactly, he left quickly. There was an IGP who was there for 6 months because she was due to go on retirement. She left. Another person came and all that. So I don't think that is much of an issue, even within the top brass of the police. They've come to expect it. Yesterday, too, 3 more changes were made to the leadership of the prison service, the immigration service, and the Ghana. But these are routine. It shouldn't generate matters. Unless, of course, you can question the competence of those who have been appointed, which I don't think anybody can do, given the impressive profiles of the personalities who have been appointed.
Even though those who are not confirmed, there's this suspicion that it is that action, because you reference the CSOs, your friends in the CSOs who took that action to court, and that you describe as not being fair, to sort of try and tie the hand of the president and say, until the matter is determined, don't take a decision on Dr. George Akuffo Dampare. Well, the CEO in question is Imani Africa, and the founding president is on Zoom. He's been listening to you. Mr. Fujo, so why did you do this?
Well, thank you very much. And Felix, good morning again.
Good morning, Franklin.
Actually, I would have wished that your letter should have just also added that Oh, well, we thank you for that, your services, and maybe and all of that. I mean, I thought that should have been there as well.
To go.
Now that you say,
don't, you see, formal statements that you limit yourself.
now that you say, anyway, at the risk of sounding as though we are overly in love with IGP Damper, far from it, really. I mean, I think somewhere last year, a few lawyers came to me, friends of Kofi, by the way. You know, Kofi is also a lawyer. And then they suggested that, there are gray areas. And I saw that these lawyers probably wanted a name. You know, like Martin is a great advocate. His name is etched in gold because he has some constitutional cases that that actually that went in favor. Not necessarily. I mean, his name will be forever remembered when it comes to the issues around not detaining suspects more than 48 hours, right? So that's what I saw, and I realized that, okay, well, maybe they also want to test the law, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. In fact, we discussed this with some of our friends in civil society and said, well, it's not a bad thing, so we should take a look at it. I'm not too sure at the time it was necessarily because of IG Damper. I mean, I saw that there was some merit in the case, because they showed me the constitutional provisions, and they said, well, unless of stated misbehavior or misconduct, and I think if I'd call it sickness or something, somehow you need to do. That's only maybe those are the things. Those are the procedures you probably need to follow in order to, if you say bye-bye to any of those service commanders. So for me, I said, well, let it go. To be fair and to be frank with you, you are right. When we started hearing, don't forget this rumor started somewhere, even under the last administration, right? And so it's not as if it is really about JD. No, not at all. Please, let's
talking about the rumor of Dr. Dampare being sacked.
You remember, even that,
it started as far back as almost a year ago. I mean,
exactly, and we had all of this stuff. But of course, yes, Dampare probably would have been the leading light in terms of this case, and so maybe he also gets covered. But essentially, for me, from a very objective point and objective place, I said we should go ahead. I can understand that the rumors that we had, and then eventually when the injunction seems to have been filed or confronted, I mean, I clearly that would have spooked people, and especially those who did not even know this matter within Jubilee or Flagstaff, and said, what the hell? I mean, we won't do things the way we want to do it. Who can stop us? And so for me, well, you're well within your rights to say, to do what you did. And I don't think the president necessarily was being derailed. Just as I don't think we're trying to derail Akufo-Addo when we took this matter at the time.
Right.
You recall, but I just thought that it is humane sometimes to also say that, well, maybe I don't have to give reasons, but in this case, maybe there must be good reasons. You see, don't forget that, you know, the way we do things in this part of our world is a little bit too crude. Well, if the gentleman may have all kinds of issues and probably whatever it is, but if you are the appointing authority and you are relieving someone who has rendered service to the state, maybe you should probably also talk to him to understand there's not been a single conversation about it. And then when your letter came, it was dry, it was cold, you know, it sounded as though. And on top of it, I would have thought that, look, there must be some little reason given. People are saying all kinds of things that, oh, security, what security? Who told you that people don't give reasons in certain jurisdictions when they relieve people? It shouldn't be, the fact that it's not being done in this country doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Okay.
And I thought that maybe we want to do something like that, you know, because look, if you don't give reasons why some people are really, don't forget, even our own Anado that we criticize and obviously chucked him out of the system. Even when he removed Domelevo, however contrite, however unwitty, however wicked, however crude, however brute the reasons were, they gave reasons why they removed Domelevo. You remember? And some activists of my friends went to court just as the Supreme Court ruled much later. I think these things also bear some semblance. It would have really been nice that you were doing this, and the former IGP was also there, nicely hand over, and then you go out. The optics really help. But sometimes, I think, maybe, I don't know what transpired, but if it was because of the immediate or latent action that was taken, trust me, it has nothing to do with any of the things you're talking about at all. I just thought that, well, if May 7th was not far away, nobody is saying you should stop whatever you're doing, but hey, it was just to remind you that something of the sort would have happened. And maybe you should have just done a little bit more humane, my brother.
Perfect.
That's all I'm asking. I think these things help a lot. So that the next person doesn't feel that, oh, okay, so Mr. What's his name? The IG Yohuno, great man. How old is he, by the way?
Well, Christian Yohuno?
He's 59.
59.
When is he retiring? Next year? Okay, well, maybe you'll be given an extension.
Right.
So maybe if after next year he's going, look, maybe they want to extend his how do you call it, his stay for another year. So then you may be forced to give some reasons, right? So somehow governance has changed. You guys want to reset. This is all part of the reset process.
Okay.
So carry us along. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, he talks about the letter being dry and no reason. Maybe in a minute, just a minute on that one about the construction of the letter on Thursday night.
Oh, well, the experts always caution that you keep it as brief as possible. You don't go beyond the information you are passing. And that's precisely, but it is not in any way a sign of any institutional anger or outrage at Mr. Dampari. There's absolutely nothing. Dr. Dampari, I should say. We have absolutely nothing against him. I don't have any. In fact, he's not someone I actually know, to be honest with you. So I pass on information that is given me. And my position is that when you are giving information, you convey it exactly as you are giving it. You don't embellish it or add anything until it is necessary. Right, yes.
No, I'm very clear. His Excellency John Mahama could have made any better appointment than this my brother. But look, Dampari is going to go down as, I mean, in our recent life and time, as the most transformative and impactful police IGP we've had in a very, very long time. The order, the discipline, his achievements are there. He connected with the people. He brought a human face to the service. He welcomed everybody to be part of it, and people found partnership in the police service. He is the best we have seen in a very long time. And I don't think that the president has an alternate thought around this at all. Are there issues in the police? Absolutely there are. Everybody will tell you that there's some kind of division in the police because you have a group of people who wish the old way could be the path, and then a lot of people who also embrace the new path. Go to the police service, go to the CID service. You see the order, the discipline you see there. It was not there. When you drive in front of the police, please, I wish we had videos about how the police was at the time Dampari took it. And it's been there for just about 4 years or a little less. For him to be able to achieve that transformation and reorientation, look at the visibility police, the things he has done. This is an officer who has to be celebrated. I am clear in my mind that the president appreciates Dampari. He really appreciates the work he has done. Even going into the election, the discipline, the order, the honesty with your by-elections that you won at that time. I mean, the NDC people were surprised and impressed by his work. The only problem is that a few things seem not to have been managed on the communication side. I don't think that this exit was a planned exit of the president for Dampari. I think Dampari was planned to be a celebrated person who may have been exited in a very honorable and beautiful manner. I am clear in my head that the president had to show his ownership and leadership of the process because of the legal suit. To try and do that because there's noise around is well in the right and well understood from what Franklin said. But it forces the hand of the president because you are practically trying to usurp his authority through the legal process. I think that it's natural that any president will find alternate ways to assert that I am still the man. Unfortunately for my friend Dampari, he's a victim of his good work. A lot of us love him. I wrote a piece when he was being attacked. I didn't even speak to Dampari. So just like my brother Franklin and co may have also done, they took that initiative easily on their own. But if I'm a president, I'm a politician, I would not assume that Dampari is not aware of it. And if I'm Dampari, I would have reached out to Franklin and co to tell them that please stop this. But I am clear that this matter can be smoothly resolved. Okay. The letter so eloquently explained by my brother. He and I know that under different circumstances, it would have been a lot more soft and sweet for all of us to carry the nation along. And I want to encourage the president and the entire government. You've nurtured a certain environment for our country, a certain atmosphere. I think that this matter, the corrective interventions can be made to smoothen out this whole thing. So we properly celebrate and see off a very honorable officer like you. Having said that, I beg you. Nash, hold on. Nash says I should remind you that he's sick.
I don't have enough time. Do you think that beyond, Senor mentioned the elections bit, say that it goes beyond what the police did or Dampare did, Dr. Dampare did? Yeah. That it's not so much about the vigilance of the police service, but the Ghanaian people?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Yes. Oh, you know, NDC will not tell you the full story. But the truth is that from snipers I've seen, they have to train their own men in readiness, just in case somebody stole the elections. And that was a huge deterrence.
Because Dr. Dampare had been commended with how he handled the police service deployment and so on for the elections.
Oh, but there were places, listen, that's why I said the country itself had changed. Look, almost 1.7 million votes in excess for the NDC. That tells you that, no, there was no space for rigging. But for the avoidance of doubt, I'm telling you that NDC, they are being quiet. You know, politicians, a lot of the time, we think they are not smart. They are. They look at us, and then they allow us to say what we want to say. But the real truth will be hidden somewhere. They trained lots, thousands of people in readiness, just in case MPP try to rig the election. So please, don't think that, and Dampare knew. He knew. You know, intelligence, I've seen, look. Yeah, so he's done something, yes, but if you ascribe everything to him, it's not correct.
It can't be.
Oh, I'm not sure you even did that. We are analyzing. I'm not talking about you specifically.
So what will be the consequence of this case to be heard in May?
Like
with the new
said,
appointment?
Yes, when the Supreme Court comes out with the interpretation, then the court will also decide whether it's prospective or retrospective. You know, the Domlevo one, when it came out, but then it was too late. The horses had bolted. Domlevo had retired. So it means that it's prospective. So a lot of the time, most probably, if a favorable interpretation comes for them, it will be prospective, going for the new IGP. But usually, IG position is a security position. It's not one that you say independence of the government. No, it's a security position. So each president comes and then he has to take his own IG. Right? We can do reforms. We've been calling for the reforms. And last statement, let's mention it so that people too will learn. Right. My sources say that Dampare overdid the, the lobbying. He overdid it. I hear everywhere the president went, many people were asking, keep Dampare, keep that. He went into an overdrive.
It would have come from also people naturally.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm just saying, I don't think he actively did that.
Thank you very much.
But please, where's Jampo? Where's Jampo?
Thank you very much.
Where's our Jampo? We need our Jampo back. We need our Jampo back.
He will come next week.
We need our Jampo back.
Thank you. Also to you, Phyllis Kwachofosu, I thank you so much for coming. And Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, thank you very much. My name is Alfred Ocansey. Have a great weekend.